Good afternoon. It is trial day 9 of the Commonwealth versus Karen Reed. It is the afternoon of May 10th. When we left off after this morning's wild ride, we are still on cross-examination of Nicole Albert, the wife of Brian Albert, who lived at 34 Fairview and had gone to the waterfall with the victim and defendant in this case, and then gone back to her home. Her son was celebrating his birthday. We've gotten into a cross-examination about the dog Chloe being rehomed, about phone calls with her sister, Jen McCabe, who we know was with the defendant that morning and helping the defendant look for the victim when they found the victim in the yard of the Alberts. We have heard that even though her bedroom is at the very front of the house overlooking the lawn, the large turnout of law enforcement, fire, and the rest of it did not wake her up. And there's more, but we're going to get into it later because we have got to get back into court. I had to pick up a kiddo. So thank you, chat, for no spoilers. I appreciate it. We are watching this case not only as the jury, but right now we're a little bit behind time. I'm sure we'll pick, I can't say I'm sure. We may or may not. What, if anything, will we catch up to real time? We may not. They will probably end a little early because it's Friday. Today has just been wild. So what we're going to do right now is get back into court. And you know what? Blessedly, every time they go to sidebar, we can just zoom right past it. So let's
bring the jury.
Let's go, law nerds. I'm going to roll the intro and we're going to get right into court.
Hey there, I'm Emily D. Baker, the internet's go-to legal analyst, breaking down the legal side of the pop culture and entertainment stories we can't stop talking about. I'm a big fan of the cursey words. I've been a licensed attorney for over 17 years, but this is not legal advice. This is where the law nerds unite to talk about facts, not... Let's get into it.
And as I said, we're here to talk about facts, but today has been full of, how many seconds into the stream we are? Fuckery. Today's been full of fuckery. From Trooper Bukkake, who's never going to be called anything again in his life, to some of the answers we've seen on the stand, to the rest of it. Like, we live here now. Today has been so spicy. The Quick Bits channel will have the breakdown of it. I don't even know. I just am we're like full tilt in court today. Look, some court days are boring. Some court days are not. So today is just, today's been a full Friday. That's for sure.
Hey, please be seated. Close back in session.
All right, can we have Ms. Albert, please?
Brings a great question. So the dog was in the bedroom with them, but didn't go nuts when they were all outside. Yeah, didn't go nuts over, I don't know. I've never had a dog, but it's my impression of dogs that maybe sirens and lights, lots of flashing lights, maybe raise the awareness of a dog.
All right, Ms. Little, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I imagine that they turned off the sirens. Nobody was in the street. It was a blizzard, but the lights were still there. So.
Your Honor, before we start, Exhibit S, which was marked for identification, I believe the proper foundation is laid. I'd ask.
So let's not do that from there. Let me see it, please.
Sure.
Do we have S as in Sam, or X?
Identification.
S as in Sam?
We've got identification of an exhibit.
Thank you.
The court is trying to go through procedure with this attorney. This is still witness number 20.
Oh, it wasn't today?
25, Nicole
Why don't you come
Albert.
to sidebar, folks?
There are some things this judge does that I like, some things that I don't. I don't like that the judge doesn't just come out onto the bench a little bit before the jury's there to handle these small issues before court begins. These things can be resumed in open court with the attorneys without being at sidebar, which always takes longer because people are trying to be careful of not saying things too loudly.
Graphic representation.
And this is regarding the representation of the home. They did not make it clear whether this was a photo of the home or a digital recreation. And I'm not surprised that they need to stipulate for the foundation and go through that to make it clear to the jury it's not an actual photo, that it is a composited image of some sort. But again, they could have done that.
The parties have stipulated that Exhibit X is a graphic representation of 34 Fairview.
And not a photo.
Not a photograph.
That's
Okay,
more clear.
sure.
A graphic representation.
Now you can approach the witness if you. Oh, you just want to put it into evidence now?
Your Honor.
Okay. So that will be our next exhibit. Madam Court Reporter? Thank you.
You actually need it.
She has to hand it to.
Yes.
Court days take long. If you wonder why, it's stuff like this. Court has a lot of rules, a lot of procedure,
Ms. Albert, you
a lot of back and
testified
forth.
that Jennifer McCabe woke you up around 6:45 a.m., correct?
I believe I said between 6 and 6:30, but
She did say that.
could have been
That
6.
was what woke you up, correct?
Yes.
She obviously had
She said between 6 or 6:30. The prosecution corrected her and said, or the defense did. Somebody said, could it have been 6:45 based on the dash cam footage?
access to the house.
Yes.
The door wasn't locked.
Nope.
That's sort of a typical practice for you.
Yeah, it was just sometimes with the kids, the last one in, supposed to lock it. They didn't.
They have 5
You
kids.
know.
I mean, I don't
It just wasn't always locked.
quibble with
Inside
that.
your house, you had plenty of
But did-
blankets and other items that could have been comfort to a man laying in the snow, correct?
Yes.
Your Honor.
So as to that form, I'm going to sustain the objection. You can ask the question a different way, Ms. Little.
Could have been
Ms.
calls for
Albert,
speculation.
You had blankets inside of your house that could have helped someone who was freezing outside.
Objection.
So I'm going to sustain the objection.
To
You
the
can
form
ask
of the
a
question.
shorter form of that question.
The judge is trying to help the attorney kind of, you have blankets in your
Albert,
house.
You had blankets in the house, correct?
Yes.
You're
Because
also lying next to a
it's
first
also-
responder.
speculation and argument is part of why, and the judge is trying to help her. I know a lot of you think this judge just hates the defense, but the judge is trying to help her, like, and saying shorten the question, trying to help her clip off the part that's the issue and the objectionable part. So the judge is trying.
Objection.
That morning, correct?
You can answer that.
Yes.
And neither you nor your husband came outside to help Johnny, correct?
We did not go outside because we had no idea what was going on outside. We were sound asleep until my sister came into my bedroom.
No further questions.
Okay. Mr. Lally?
You broke
Thank you,
for
Your Honor.
lunch with 3 more questions left. I should have just let this witness finish. This judge does stop on the dot, but
With regard to phone calls from your sister Jennifer McCabe that morning, shortly after 6
the
a.m.,
question was also
did those
argumentative.
phone calls wake you up?
No.
Did you answer those phone calls?
No.
Did you speak to Jennifer McCabe on the phone prior to her, or at any point on that morning prior to her coming into your room?
I did not.
And you were shown something that's a Cellbrite extraction report, correct?
Yes.
And not just that specific one, but have you ever seen any Cellbrite extraction report before in your life?
No.
So fair to say you don't know how to interpret the data that's on there?
No.
Fair to say that you don't know whether or not an answered call or something that's listed as
Those
answered
are
was something that was
leading.
actually answered or went to voice.
Correct.
Now, with regard to your dog, Chloe,
Mm-hmm.
following that incident in May of 2022, what, if anything, did you and your husband do
There we go
with
again.
regard to the person that had been bitten?
Well, we had gone over to their house to apologize for what had happened and, offered to pay any bills, that they may have had for any injury to the dog or anything. And then after that, we just decided that we thought the best thing to do would be to try to rehome it because I just didn't want something like that to happen again.
And can you explain to the jury sort of what are the steps that you took in the process of rehoming your dog?
Well, initially I had called a bunch of shelters and they were pretty much telling me that it would be hard to rehome her. She was
Because of the
dog
bite?
aggressive and they would probably have to put her down. I didn't want to do that. The family, we love the dog. And so I did not want to do that. So I reached out to the woman in Texas who we got the dog from to see if she could help. And she said, you know, she couldn't take it back, but she would try to help me out. So she ended up finding a woman who lived in Vermont. I think she lived alone. She had big property. It seemed like a good fit. She wanted to take Chloe, and we made arrangements. And I went and met this woman halfway, and I gave her Chloe.
And what, if any, conversations or contact have you had with that woman in Vermont since rehoming your dog?
For a few months after I,
Objection, Your Honor.
So not the substance of it, but
She wasn't getting into the
Have you
subject.
had contact with the woman in Vermont?
yes, I did for a few months, back and forth.
So she has had contact.
Now,
She knows where those
with
people
reference
are.
to Chloe, when your sister Jennifer McCabe comes into your bedroom hysterical that morning of January 29th,
Did the
was
dog
Chloe in
react?
the room at the time?
Yes.
You were asked some questions about the evening or the early morning when
The
people
dog
had
didn't
come
react to
waterfall
somebody
back to your
busting
room,
into
correct?
your room?
And at some point, you were cleaning, and
Sorry.
Mr. Higgins and your husband were
You're telling me that the German Shepherd or dog of any kind did not respond to somebody busting into your bedroom with like their ass on fire at like 6 something in the morning? Okay.
out of your line of sight. Is that correct?
Yes.
How
Doesn't
long a period of time are we talking?
seem normal.
I don't, it wasn't very long, a couple minutes. Wasn't watching where everybody was and what everybody was doing.
Fair to say, relatively short period of time.
Yes.
I have nothing further.
okay.
Briefly, Your Honor.
Okay.
Testimony about the dog is odd to me.
So you need to take this down, sir. Thank you. There was something that was just up there. Go ahead.
Ms. Albert, you never received any voicemails from Jennifer McCabe on January 29th, did you?
Not that I'm aware of.
You also have never produced, pursuant to our request, any documentation about the whereabouts of Chloe.
The objection sustained. I'm going to strike that question. Disregard the question. Well, questions aren't evidence, so we can leave it on the record, but the objection sustained.
You've never turned over any information about the location of Chloe since the pendency of this case, have you?
Objection, Your Honor. May we approach?
I'm just going to sustain the objection.
The defense should ask to approach. Is there a reason that's improper to get
Have you
into?
ever provided information about the whereabouts of Chloe to the Commonwealth in this case?
It's a good question.
Yes, I believe I have.
You have.
You have?
I believe so.
When did you do that?
Oh.
Your Honor, may we approach?
Yes.
Lolly's like, no fucking way. No fucking way. Nope, 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 nope. Lolly's like, no, 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 no. We're not getting into this right now because the witness is saying, I think I turned that information over to the prosecution. If that's true, the prosecution's required to turn it over to the defense. Oh, how long is this sidebar? A minute. All right. Oh, we dismissed the witness at the end of that sidebar. That's interesting. And chat, we don't know if it's a discovery violation because we don't know if this witness actually gave that information to the prosecution or not. The impression is left that she did, but we don't know if that information was ever provided to the prosecution or not. So I'm not saying it's a discovery violation. A question has been raised,
Okay, thank you very much. All right, Ms. Albert, you are all set.
and they
Thank
said
you.
we have nothing further. So Sentient Dreamer, you don't have to
Your
curse
next
while you're at
witness, Mr.
work,
Levin?
but I make
Yes, Your Honor. The Commonwealth
absolutely
call.
no promises.
Excuse me, Mr. Brian Albert, to the stand.
Headphones are always advised when watching me. Here we go. Sorry for anyone who asked me not to curse. I'm sorry. This is what's happening. Here we go. Here we go. Here the fuck we go. With Brian Albert taking the stand. I have so many questions. So many questions. Hi, sir. When exactly did you retire?
Benjamin, you solemnly swear the evidence you give the court.
Do you spell your name with an I or a Y?
Nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you.
Well.
All right, whenever you're ready, Mr. Lally.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Oh,
Good
boy.
afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Your Honor, and good afternoon to the jury.
Good afternoon.
Okay, first of all, love the accent. Keep in mind that Brian Albert has been a Boston police detective for 30 years. This is someone who will have testified in court a lot. Like a lot.
So could you please state your name?
Different than some of the other witnesses.
Sure, it's Brian, last name Albert, Albert.
And where do you live, sir?
I live in Norwood, Massachusetts.
How long have you lived in
That
Norwood?
rabbit is moving
Approximately
across my
a
lawn.
year.
And who, if anyone, do you live in Norwood with?
My wife, Nicole, and my son, Brian, and my son, Brendan.
Who do you live with?
Actually, just a little bit about your family as far as, let me start with yourself and your wife, Nicole. How long have the two of you been married?
Approximately 29 years.
And were you together for a period of time prior to getting married?
Yes, we've known each other since we were 13, 14 years old.
And do you have any siblings, sir?
I do.
Oh, Jesus.
How many siblings do you have?
I have 5 brothers and 1 sister.
And if you could, just as far as, are you the oldest?
I'm the oldest of 7, yes.
The jury needs a chart.
And as far as your brothers and sisters are concerned, what are their names? And if you could rank them sort of by age.
Rank them.
Sure. That,
Wait, no. Can we put them on a Dance Moms pyramid? Can we just, Lolly? Can we put them on a dance? Can we do a tier list of his brothers and sisters? If he's going to rank his family, and being the oldest of 7, I would like a tier list. I would not like them in chronological order. Can we a tier list? A tier list.
Next sibling after me is my sister Kathleen. Then I have a brother Chris, a brother Kevin, a brother Keith, a brother Brendan, and a brother Timmy.
And you and your
Do you
wife,
think they
Nicole,
call
do
Timmy
you have,
Timmy?
children?
Yes,
And how many children do you have?
5.
And how old are they?
So my oldest daughter is 29. My son Brian is 25. My son Brendan turns 23 today. And I have twins, or we have twins that are 20 years old. Caitlin's 28. I'm sorry, I said 29.
Oh, don't do that to her.
Now, prior to living at your address,
I didn't mind
in,
turning 30, but not
Norwood,
everybody feels the same
where
way.
did you live before that?
Canton, Mass.
And how long have you lived in Canton?
Approximately in the house on Fairview Road, approximately 11 years.
And in total, about how long have you been a resident of Canton before moving to Norwood?
Approximately 45 years.
And that address, that's 34 Fairview Road, is that right?
Yes.
And what, if any, relationship did that home or that residence have to your family before you and your wife and your
We
children?
know
My parents had lived at that residence prior to us.
that's the family home.
So you had spent some of your childhood in that house?
Did you arm wrestle your siblings
Yes.
for it, or were they like, take it, we don't
And
need
you
5
work, sir?
bedrooms?
I retired now. Retired.
What did you retire from?
Boston Police Department.
And how long were you a member of the Boston Police Department?
Approximately 30 years.
And within the Boston Police Department, were you assigned to any sort of specific unit or special duties?
My last assignment, is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
Yes. My last assignment was the Boston Police Fugitive Unit.
Now, sir, if I could turn your attention to January 28th, 2022. Do you recall that date?
Yes.
And do you recall what day of the week that was?
The 28th, I believe, was a Friday.
And when you first sort of got up on the 28th, where were you with that?
On the 28th, I was in New York City.
And why had you gone to New York?
So I went to New York for a funeral of a New York City police officer who was killed in the line of duty.
And about what time or what day did you go down to New York for
We went down the day before, so I believe that was Thursday.
Recall how it was that you got down there?
Yes, I flew to New York.
And when you say we, who, if anyone, went with you on that trip to New York for the funeral?
No,
I flew with-
Lolly, when you say we, who did you travel with? Because we know there's someone. He said we. We does not just mean him. You don't need to ask who, if anyone. Are you going to ask what he drank on the flight and what his seat number was?
A friend and a coworker named Eddie Hernandez.
So another Boston police officer?
Yes.
And down in New York at that funeral, were there other members of law enforcement that you knew or were familiar with and working?
Yes, there were thousands of police officers that went to the funeral.
And included within those people, you mentioned you have a brother, Kevin, is that correct?
Yes,
Is he a police officer as well?
he is.
And where is he?
He's a detective in Canton, Massachusetts.
And was he down at this funeral as well?
He was.
And do you know a gentleman by the name of Brian Higgins?
Yes.
And was Brian Higgins at this funeral service as well?
Yes, he was.
And how is it that you know Brian Higgins?
So I know Brian Higgins initially from work, a professional relationship. I've known him known of him for 10 or 15 years. And then the past few years, more recently, we worked together on a closer basis, and I became better friends with him.
And fair to say that when you became better friends with him, you also sort of socialized with him outside of work?
Yes.
Now,
Okay.
as far as your return trip from New York, what, if anything, happened with them?
On the return trip from New York, we drove back.
Why did you drive versus fly back when you flew?
Weather.
So that weekend there was anticipated snowstorm, and I believe the flight that we were taking with JetBlue may have even been canceled. And Brian Higgins was leaving in a vehicle that morning, so we ended up driving, or after the funeral, we ended up driving with him.
And so it's yourself, Mr. Higgins.
What, if any,
and
playlist
then,
did you have?
If anyone else went with you on the drive back to Massachusetts?
Eddie Hernandez and my brother Kevin.
And when you arrived back in Massachusetts, where was it sort of specifically that you went first?
I initially went to the Charlestown to pick up my vehicle.
Where was your vehicle parked in Charleston?
It was at a police station, Charlestown Station. It's a satellite station located in Charlestown.
Charlestown, not
Airport, is that
Charleston.
correct?
Yes.
So that would have been Logan that you flew out of and intended to fly back into?
Logan Airport, yes.
And after you were dropped off with your vehicle, what kind of
Okay.
vehicle was that?
That was a Ford Edge,
Was that a personal vehicle or work vehicle?
work vehicle.
And so you get dropped back off at your work vehicle. Where did you go?
So from Charlestown, I drove back towards the Canton area, and I met Brian Higgins at a restaurant bar called the Hillside.
Is that in Canton as well?
I believe so. It's on the Canton-Milton line. I believe it sits in Canton.
He's like, it's on the cusp.
And what was the purpose of you and Mr. Higgins going?
To get some food.
After the drive home, he asked if I wanted to get some food and stop off, and I said yes.
And if you know about what time was it that you got to the Hillside with Mr. Higgins?
I want to say around 9:30, perhaps. Not entirely sure.
When you arrived there, what did you do?
So we went into the establishment and
Into the
had a drink
establishment.
and hung out for a while.
And did you order any food there?
I did not. I believe Brian did, though.
And while you were at the Hillside with Mr. Higgins, what, if any, communication did you receive from your wife, Nicole?
So around that time, I talked to my wife, I think more than once, and she had let me know that her and a few people were at another location in Canton.
Would that
She
be
had
the
asked if
waterfall?
I wanted to come by and see them.
It's not a secret at
What was
this
that
point.
other location?
That other location was the waterfall.
Is that an establishment you were familiar with
Yes,
Do they have a band?
before several times?
I had been there before,
Do
yes.
they have high top tables?
And so you drove then from the Hillside to the waterfall?
Yes.
About how long a drive is that?
What, if any, relevance does that
Maybe
have?
7 minutes.
Everything's 7 minutes in
Between
Canton.
less than 10 minutes.
And so as you're going on that drive, the snow that was anticipated coming in, had that anything related to that started yet?
No, I at that time I don't recall any snow.
And in relation to the waterfall, where did you park?
In the parking lot for the waterfall,
That better
which
matter.
is adjacent to the door to go inside. So it's to the left if you're looking at the building from Washington Street.
And when you come into, now, when you left the hillside, Mr. Higgins stayed there?
Yes, he stayed.
And when you came into the waterfall, who, if anyone, was there?
So when I walked in, I saw my wife, my oldest daughter, Caitlin. I saw my brother, Chris, his wife, Julie, my brother-in-law, Matt, and my sister-in-law, Jen.
Were they at a high top table? What type of wood was it made out of?
Brother-in-law Matt and your sister-in-law Jen.
Approximately how many millimeters long was it?
Yes.
And if you could just explain to the jury sort of how you were related as far as what narrative you want.
So my brother Chris,
My
his
brother's-
wife is Julie, and then Nicole's sister is Jen, and then
Jen's
Jen's
married
husband
to
is
Matt.
Matt McCabe.
And is it fair to say that you've probably known Jennifer McCabe about as long as you've known your wife, Nicole?
Yes, since she was a little kid, maybe 6, 7 years old.
And you see these people, and where are they sort of situated in the waterfall?
So there was a high top table kind of in the front area as you walk in, kind of in the middle of the room. And everybody was just kind of around the high top table.
And what, if anything, was there as far as live entertainment at the waterfall that night?
There was a band playing there.
We still don't know the name of the band. I'm
With reference
shocked.
to the people that you've just spoken.
The way I'm shocked that we don't know the name of the band and the type of music that was playing at this point, by the way that they've asked so many questions, I am stunned that we do not know that minute detail.
As far as your wife and your daughter specifically.
They
Were
really like the
at
high top tables.
High top table closer to the band or further away?
So they were on the side of the table that's, I guess, closer to the door as you come in. And then there were other people on the opposite side of the table that was closer to the bar area.
Did they play Killing Me Softly?
And after you came into the waterfall, went up to the group of your family, what did you order anything? What did you do there?
Yeah, I kind of just said hi to everybody. I don't recall exactly, but I'm sure I ordered a drink. And then just kind of hung out with family and friends.
And following your arrival, who, if anyone else, showed up and eventually sort of joined your group?
There was another couple at the table. I don't know if they were there initially when I walked in, but there was another couple at the table whom I believed were there before I got there,
Was
but
it the
I just don't know what their
Because
names
they're
were.
our favorite.
Do you know how they were related to your group?
I don't. I think they're friends with Jen and Matt, but I'm not 100% sure.
And where were they situated in reference to where your wife and your daughter were?
So they were, I believe, to the right of this pretty large high top table.
So towards the other end of the table.
Yes.
The
And if you
Colakeithases are like,
recall,
we're never
when
hanging
you
out with this group again, ever.
I don't recall.
You know, Mrs. Colakeithas is like, I didn't even want to go out that night. I was tired. I worked all day. I worked 10 hours and I went to a basketball game and all I wanted was Wingstop. And then my kids are like, Mom, you never go out. And she's like, fine, I'm going out. So she goes out. And then the night out, the one night out, she wanted to stay home after work. The one night out, she ends up in court over multiple years later. Like the way I feel for this woman who's like, I just wanted to stay home. I was tired. And these people are like, we don't even know them. And I'm sure they're like, exclude me from all of this. Just don't invite us out again. Just don't invite us out again. Just leave it be.
I usually drink beer, Mick Ultra, but I can't remember that night what I was drinking.
Mick Ultra clearly is definitely what you drink because you call it Mick Ultra. Just
following your arrival there and meet up with your family. Were
Yep.
there other friends or family that eventually showed up at this establishment and joined your group?
Yes.
And who were they, sir?
So after I was there, maybe about a half hour, Brian Higgins arrived at the location.
And if you recall, what, if any, sort of communication did you have with Mr. Higgins, or how did Mr. Higgins know to come to the waterfall specifically?
Because while we were at the hillside, I had mentioned that I was going to be leaving to go to the waterfall to see my family who was already there. And I invited him to come by if he wanted to.
And at any point in time, sort of throughout
What
the
did that
course of the
text
day,
say?
Yourself and Mr. Higgins, you had each other.
Those are my favorite texts so far.
And cell numbers, things like that.
Yes.
And at any point in time throughout the course of the day or the evening, did you have occasion to text or phone call or anything with Mr. Higgins?
Yes.
Did you call him any names to get him to the bar?
Now,
Because
after Mr.
these are my
Higgins
favorite texts in the whole
arrived,
trial.
Who, if anyone else, came into the waterfall and joined you?
Probably after about a half hour later from Brian Higgins arriving, John O'Keefe came into the waterfall with the defendant.
And that would have been probably about 11 o'clock, is that correct?
Yes.
And John O'Keefe, if you could tell the jury, well, first, did you know John O'Keefe?
So I knew John O'Keefe, but not well. I had only met him 2 times prior to that night. But I knew him to be a Boston cop, and I knew of him, and I knew some things about him.
The
And
things are
as
probably that he
far
took in
as,
his niece and nephew,
the
truly,
Boston
because his
Police
department would have known
Department,
that.
it's a fairly large department, would you agree with that?
Yes.
And about how many members or how many people are on Boston Police?
Depending on the year, I mean, sometimes it's upwards of 2,000.
Oh, your wife said
In the
3,000.
course of your work over the decades that you worked with the Boston Police, did you
Still a large
ever
department.
work with or have any professional sort of interaction with John O'Keefe?
No, I don't remember working with him directly within the Boston Police Department.
Were you aware of sort of what his role was or what he did within the Boston Police?
Yes, I knew where he worked.
And where did he work?
I believe he worked at the SORI unit, which is the sex offender registry unit.
And you mentioned just briefly before that you had heard of Mr. O'Keefe, correct?
Yes.
And what is it that you had heard about?
His department.
Well, I knew
moved
him to be a friend of my sister-in-law, Jen, and her husband, Matt. I knew him to be a friend of my brother, Chris, and my sister-in-law, Julie. I knew him to be a friend of my brother, Kevin's. I've heard his name mentioned multiple times, and I knew that he had a horrible couple tragedies in his family, and I knew that he stepped up and decided to take care of his niece and his nephew when they tragically lost their parents.
And how would you sort of describe your relationship with John O'Keefe?
The whole department, I imagine, would have known that.
2022.
Although I didn't know him well, I considered him to be a friend, and our relationship was very, very good, cordial, and I considered him to be somebody that I could hang out with and have a good time
And
with.
have a beer, right.
Now, you mentioned that Mr. O'Keefe walked in around 11 o'clock to the waterfall with the defendant. For clarity purposes, you're referring to Karen Reed, is that correct?
Yes.
And do you see Ms. Reed in the courtroom today?
Yes, I do.
Could you just identify as to where she's seated or an article of clothing she's wearing?
Sure. She's a female at the table in front of me with a black top on, long sleeve.
Just as the record reflect identification.
I mean, there's probably 2 females at that table, but
Now, with regard to Ms. Reed,
You know.
had you met Ms. Reed prior to that date of January 28th?
I believe I had met her one time a week prior.
And do you recall any specifics about that meeting or how it is that you came to meet her about a week prior?
I do.
And if you could explain to the jury what those circumstances were.
Sure. I met her at the hillside. I believe she was there with John a week prior.
And as far as your interaction with her on that particular evening, anything significant stand out to you?
No.
Now, when they came in, and by they, I'm sorry, I mean Mr. O'Keefe and Ms. Reed came into the waterfall, where did they go in relation to where you were sort of situated at the high top?
he could have asked.
So I don't remember them
coming in?
actually walking in
Right.
the front door. I remember them being in my general area at some point. And they went towards the other side of the table where my sister-in-law Jen and my brother-in-law Matt were standing.
And at some point, did either or both of them make their way down towards your side of the table, your side of the table, excuse me, and what, if any, interactions did you have?
Yes, I remember having an interaction, or more than one interaction, with John. Came over to say hello, and we had some conversation, not for too long, but yes.
Do you remember anything specific about that conversation or anything stand out to you?
No, I think we were talking mostly about work. I think he let me know that the
Cop shop
sergeant,
talk.
I guess, that worked in his unit was leaving, or left, or transferred, and he was jokingly saying that I should try to get a job over it where he works.
Cop shop talk.
And as far as the defendant, Ms. Reed, what, if any, conversation or interaction did you have?
I don't remember having any interaction with her whatsoever.
Now, as far as when Mr. O'Keefe came over, what, if anything, did you observe as far as what he was wearing, clothing, anything like that?
I don't really remember what he was wearing for clothing. I believe he had a baseball hat on. Other than that, I can't remember his clothing.
And specifically, do you recall anything as far as like a winter jacket or a big coat or anything like that?
I can't say. I wasn't really paying attention to what he was wearing. I don't know.
It's like I was hanging
As
with
far
my friends.
as just his general features, as far as what you could observe, what, if any, sort of injuries or anything did you observe on his person at that time?
I observed no injuries at that time.
And over the course of the evening, you had a couple of interactions with Mr. O'Keefe, is that correct?
Yeah, I believe we talked a few times, kind of hung out, stood next to each other for a while, like you normally would do at a bar restaurant.
And is the band playing while this is going on, is that correct?
Yes, the band was there. I believe they took a break here and there, but they were there for the night.
The band is playing me
Mr. Albert, how would you
to my slow
describe
demise
sort of
during
the
this
general
direct.
mood or demeanor of the group while you were at the waterfall then?
In one word, it would be fun. Everybody was in a great mood. People were getting along. It was friends and family, and just seemed like a great night.
Again, it seemed to me like everybody was like, snow day tomorrow.
Things started to
We're going out.
down, or things started to sort of end for the evening.
I believe the band stopped playing probably, close to 12, and things started winding down, a little before 12.
And if you know, from the group that you just described at the high top table that you were a part of, what was sort of the order in which people left the establishment?
Keep wanting to say hi,
starting your
Top.
approach?
So I believe the first to leave was myself, my wife Nicole, my daughter Caitlin, and Brian Higgins left at that time as well.
And had anybody left from your group prior to when, I'm sorry, so the bar starts to wind down around 12, correct?
Yes.
Prior to the bar winding down, had anybody from your group left before that?
I didn't remember or notice that. I'm not sure.
And so the first to sort of leave from your group when the bar is winding down is yourself, Mr. Higgins, your wife, and your daughter.
Yes.
And when you exit the establishment, where do you go?
Into the parking lot to my vehicle.
He went to where he
Take it back
parked the
just for
car.
a moment back into the waterfall.
No, let's not.
In the course of the evening,
Lolly.
what, if any, conversation was had by you or amongst the group that you observed as far as
That's
where to go
compound.
next, or what were you doing following the water?
That's so compound.
Okay, so there was some conversation
Yeah.
relative to people going to my brother's sub shop, which is across the street.
That's the pizza
And
place.
he was maybe going to make some pizzas for people if they were hungry. So that was discussed.
And did that end up happening?
No, some people didn't want to go over there, and for whatever reason, it just didn't happen.
Sounds like he didn't want to make everybody pizza.
And beyond that, was there
Which,
anything else that was
like, I got.
discussed as far as where to go after the waterfall?
Yes.
And what was that?
So it ended up being my son Brian's 23rd birthday. So at 12 o'clock, he would be 23. So there was some discussion about if anybody wanted to go by the house to kind of say happy birthday to him. And I know my wife, Nicole, mentioned it to Jen and Matt, and it was said, I believe, in the group where we were standing.
And then Jen grabbed
So was
Karen
that
at some
sort of
point
an
and was like,
open
"You're coming with
invitation that was
me."
extended to pretty much anybody that was around the high top tables?
Yeah, sure. Anybody that was there was welcome to come by if they wanted to.
And as far as you knew, as far as awareness of who was coming over to your house at 34 Fairview, who from the group were you aware of coming over?
I don't really remember the responses. I don't think I knew for sure if anybody was going to come, except Brian Higgins said he would come by.
And he had left around the same time as you.
Yes.
And had Brian Higgins been to your house before?
I believe he was at my house for a high school graduation party.
And high school graduation probably in the spring? Is that
The
correct?
aforementioned cookout.
It would have been the summer prior to that time. So my twins were graduating high school, and we had something at the house, and it was spring, summer of the year prior.
And around that time, so that would have been 2021, is that correct?
Yes.
So around that time, there was still sort of vestiges or whatever of the COVID pandemic, is that correct?
Yes, actually, that was just getting over, I think.
And so where was this graduation party at your house? Was that inside your house or outside your house or something?
It was actually out back. It was more of a cookout type thing.
And so as far as you can recall, prior to January 28, 2022, had Mr. Higgins been physically sort of inside your house for anything beyond using the bathroom?
Besides that graduation party, I don't believe he had ever been at my house. I'm sure he walked into the house, to use the bathroom or something that day, but I didn't really notice, whether he went in there or not.
And Your Honor, with the court's permission, there's just a couple of very short clips that I'd like to publish with this witness in reference to what's been marked as Exhibit 53, the video from the waterfall.
Back to the video at the waterfall. I'm trying not to chew chips into the mic. For all of you asking, can we just
Ms.
skip
Gilman, with
across?
reference to channel 3, if I can have.
I'm glad we can skip the sidebars. I'm trying not to.
Ms. Gilman, if I could ask you to
Zoom this
fast
too
forward
much.
to 18 minutes and 50 seconds.
Are we gonna get to the two of them messing around with each other?
Now,
The band
Mr.
is the
Albert,
fuck
direct
out of
your
there.
attention up to the screen.
11:57. The band's like
to your right here.
out.
Do you recognize what's up on the screen?
Yes.
What do you recognize that to be?
The waterfall.
And this is, at least according to the timestamp, about 11:57 p.m. on the 28th. Is that correct?
Yes.
And what's up there, is that, to the best of your recollection, a fair and accurate portrayal of what the inside of the waterfall looked like, absent sort of the quality of the video?
Yes.
And sir, I believe there should be a laser pointer on the desk before you. If you just press that button and point at the screen. What I'm going to ask you to do is if you could draw the jury's attention to who, if anyone, within this sort of still frame of the video that you recognize, if any.
With the time band across the top there, I can't really. I can see some people around the table that we were standing,
Yep.
which would be this table area here. Tough for me to say
Oh, sorry. I was just trying to move the timestamp or the closed captioning.
from here who
The
everybody
timestamp's
is.
always there.
I believe that's Brian Higgins there, but I'm not 100%.
Ms. Gilman, if you could play this, and what I'm going to ask you to ultimately play is up to the 19 minute and 58 seconds.
Okay. I still don't think I'm clear on who has the ponytail. Now I'm clear on which one his wife is, Nicole Albert, in the checkered coat.
Ms. Gilman, if you could pause it there. Now, Mr. Albert, from what you observe up there, as far as the door that you came in and came out
And the
of,
colloquithuses are
on
still
that evening, do you
up in the corner.
see generally where that door is?
Yes,
And if you could direct the jury's attention to where on the video screen it is.
doors this way.
And from just prior to in this video, we're now stopped at the 11:57 and 52nd mark. You see a group sort of making their way towards that front door, is that correct?
Yes.
And from this vantage point, are you able to recognize any of the people in that group that made their way towards it?
Yes, I believe I saw my wife, my daughter here maybe, and then I think I'm over here. But again, it's a little grainy, and I can't really see great from here. And I saw Brian Higgins, but I don't know if he's in here somewhere.
Thank you, Ms. Gilman. If you could just press play again for about 30 some odd seconds.
Wait, who's taking instruments? I'm so confused.
Thank you, Ms. Gilman. You could take that down, and then Ms. Gilman, if I could ask for one other video from channel 1, the second one down.
Oh, the outdoor video with the flag.
If I could ask you
Great.
to fast forward that to
Good.
about 5 minutes and 10 seconds.
Good. Super helpful.
And ultimately, I'm going to ask you to play it from 5 minutes and 10 seconds to 5 minutes and 50 seconds.
I really wish they would just refer to it by the timestamps that are up on the top, but not the playtime. Look, people are leaving again at 11:58. And it is snowing-ish. It is snowing, but it's not blanketed with snow.
Thank you, Ms. Gilman. Now, generally speaking, what was just played up on the screen, Mr. Albert, do you recognize what that is?
Yeah, it looks like the exit of the waterfall, and we're kind of walking out.
I would have lived for him to say it's a
Walking through the
flag.
front door, now walking out the front door and into the parking lot.
Yes, and I believe there was somebody else there. I don't know if it was somebody from the band or looks like a different person out front there.
Somebody carrying an amp.
Ms. Gilman, you can take that. Now, Mr. Albert, when you get to the parking lot, you get in the vehicle and you drive to your house, is that right?
Yes,
Okay, and specifically, you're the one driving, is that correct?
yes.
And who is in your car with you on the drive back to your house?
My wife Nicole and my daughter Caitlin.
And about how far a drive is it from the waterfall to your house?
I would say five minutes.
And the weather, as far as when you walk out, get in the car, and then start driving.
That's
what, if
actually
anything,
helpful
changed about the weather
information.
from the time you came into the waterfall to the time you came out.
Yeah, so it had started snowing a little bit more heavily. You can kind of see that on that second video. So the ground was beginning to be, coated, it looked like.
So coating on the ground, but could you, as you were driving, could you still sort of see the blacktop of the roadway?
I believe so, yes.
Just beginning to stick.
Now, you get to your house, and what, if anything, happens sort of as you're coming into your driveway?
What happened when you got home?
It looks like that. Had looked like Brian had gotten there first, Brian Higgins, and he was backing out, so I could pull my car in.
And as far as the vehicle that Mr. Higgins was driving on that evening from the waterfall, was that the same vehicle that he had driven with you back from New York?
No,
And what kind of vehicle was the one that he was driving back from New York, and what kind of vehicle was the one he was driving that night?
so the one back from New York, he was driving a full size pickup truck. I'm not sure what make or model, but it had a cab on the back, and I believe it's gray. And then that night later in the night at the waterfall, he had a Jeep Wrangler vehicle that I believe is white, but I'm not 100%.
So he had arrived at your house before you, is that correct?
Yes.
And you said it looked like he had done something to the driveway?
He may have skimmed. He had a plow on his truck, and I think he may have plowed the driveway and then pulled out, and then we pulled in.
And as far as vehicles at your house, how many around this time of January 22, between yourself, your wife, kids, how many vehicles did you have?
I believe 3.
And what type of vehicles and who was sort of the primary driver with regard to those?
So I had we had a Ford Explorer, a Cadillac SUV. It's a smaller SUV that my wife Nicole drives, and the Ford Edge that I already spoke of, and I believe we had one more vehicle that one of my kids drove at that time. And I'm just trying to remember. It might have been an Escape, maybe a Ford Escape. Someone could have had that at college. Someone could have had that at school. So I don't remember if it was there that night or not.
So all the vehicles were essentially like SUVs.
He did talk about the work
Yes,
car.
we didn't own any sedans or any cars.
Now, as far as when you pull into the
Ask him about the
driveway,
cars more.
The house at 34 Fairview has a 2-car garage.
I'm so
Yes.
tired of treading the same ground over and over.
You or other members of your family would utilize
And
as far
over.
as parking vehicles?
No, so
And over.
unfortunately, we didn't use the garage a lot because we kind of used it for storage, and we had a lot of stuff out there, so we very seldom used it.
And if you recall,
I mean, they have 5
pulling
kids,
into the
fair.
Driveway, did you pull into the left side, the right side, or?
I believe I pulled in on the left side of the driveway.
And you mentioned that Mr. Higgins had sort of scooped with the plow, like in the driveway, and then parked on the street. Do you recall where, in relation to your house or your driveway, he parked?
So no, I don't remember where Brian Higgins parked. I remember him pulling out so I could pull in, and then I didn't really see where he parked.
And you then go into your house, is that correct?
Yes.
And are all of you, and by all of you, I mean yourself, your wife, your daughter, and Mr. Higgins all sort of coming in around the same time?
Basically, yes.
When you come into your house, do you recall how many doors in the front of the house are there?
So we have 2 front doors.
And one would be sort of by some steps, is that correct?
There's actually steps on both doors, but one of them is, I guess, considered the front door with a large set of steps.
All the doors
That would be
upstairs,
sort of brick
Lolly.
steps, is that right?
Yes.
And that leads into a foyer area of the house.
Yes.
And the other door, where does that lead?
So the other door opens up right into the we call it the family room, but right into the family room den area.
And do you recall specifically which door you utilized on that evening to go into the house?
I believe I went in the door on the right, which goes into the den. Not really sure what other doors people used.
Side door.
And when you came into the house, who, if anyone, was present beyond the people that you would come in with?
So my son Brian was home. He had 2 friends, I believe, Julie and Sarah.
And these were people that you had known as friends of your son from prior vacation?
I didn't know Sarah. I had met Julie once or twice.
And as you were walking in, who, if anyone else, beyond your son and his 2 friends was there?
And my nephew Colin.
That'd be Colin Albert, is that correct?
Yes, Chris and Julie's son Colin.
And about how old was Colin around then?
I believe he was just about 18, 17, 18. He's in high school.
So you're still in high school at the time?
Yes.
And when you walk in, where was Colin in relation to your son and the 2 girls that he was with?
He was just kind of standing in the kitchen with Brian and the 2 girls. Brian and the 2 girls were at the kitchen table, and Colin was just kind of standing there.
Which is consistent with
And
what his wife
from
said the first
that
time
you
she
arrived home,
testified
how long was Colin at your
at
No more
Grand
than
jury.
5 minutes.
And earlier in the day today.
And where did he go?
He left. He just said he was getting picked up.
We said he was getting picked up, and a few minutes later he left your house.
Yes, I went and used the bathroom. I came out and he was gone.
Not consistent with what she said the second time. The second time she said Colin was passing her in the hallway. The first time she said Colin is in the kitchen with everybody. So.
Now, at some point subsequent to that, who, if anyone else, arrived or showed up at your house?
Did anyone else show up?
After Colin left the house,
Yes.
nobody else arrived at the house.
Your sister-in-law, Jennifer McCabe, Matthew McCabe, at some point
Never
did they
came?
come by?
Yes, I thought you were referring to after they showed up.
He's asking after
So
Colin
when-
left.
My question is, do you know whether or not when Jennifer McCabe and Matthew McCabe arrived at your house, was Colin still there?
I don't know if he was still there or not. I believe he left before they came, but I'm not 100%.
So you come home and you go to use the restroom, is that correct?
Yes,
And when you go to use the restroom, Colin's there, correct?
yes,
And the McCabe's are not?
they are not.
When you come back from the restroom, Colin's not there,
Yes, Colin was gone.
and the McCabe's are there?
No, I don't believe they had arrived yet.
Okay, so they arrived sometime after Colin had left.
Yes.
And over the course of that evening of the 28th into the early morning of the 29th, did anybody else come into your house, or did anybody else come into your house at any point?
No.
Now, in addition to yourself, your wife, and your son, did you have any pets at that time?
Yeah, yes, we did.
Okay. And what kind of pets did you have?
We had a dog.
And what kind of dog was that?
So it was a German Shepherd mix.
And what was the name of the dog?
Chloe.
And how long had you and your family had the dog?
We had Chloe for approximately, at that time, maybe 6 or 7 years.
Do you recall how you got the dog or where you got the dog from?
Oh,
The dog was from a shelter in Dallas, Texas, actually.
Lolly,
So essentially a rescue dog, is that correct?
Yes, rescue dog.
And
We
when
know.
you got home after you...
Is that in
went to the
controversy?
bathroom,
Where they got
what,
the
if anything,
dog?
Did you do with reference to the dog? Well,
where they sent the dogs in controversy.
At some point, I went upstairs to grab the dog and let her out back to use the bathroom.
and so when you would take the dog out, or when anybody would take the dog out to use the bathroom, how would that be accomplished? So what I'm asking is, would the dog be on a leash, or would it be let out in the yard, or...
Oh my God, Lolly.
No, so the backyard's fenced in, so I would open up the back door
Just
and
let her
she can
out.
go out, use the bathroom, and come back inside.
So the entirety of your backyard, that's a fenced-in backyard, is that correct?
Yes.
And beyond that fence, as far as the abutting, what sort of abuts the back of your property?
So behind the back fence, there's a railroad track. I believe it's a commuter rail that's behind the fence.
And is there any sort of opening or way to open the back of that fence to get in sort of any wooded area between your house and the tracks?
Yes, there's a gate back there.
And the gate, as far as when you let the dog out in the back that night, did you stay with the dog while the dog was outside?
I stayed at the doorway, and the dog went to the bathroom and then ran right back in.
So about how long was the dog outside?
She was out back for maybe 2 or 3 minutes.
So went outside, went to the bathroom, came back in.
Yes.
And when the dog came back inside the house, where did the dog go?
So the dog kind of walked around in the kitchen for a few minutes, and then I took her upstairs.
And when you took her upstairs, where upstairs did you take her?
So the dog liked to sleep in our room, mine and my wife's room. So a lot of times she would go up there on her own. Sometimes I would walk her up, and I walked her up to our bedroom.
And at any point in time for the remainder of that evening or the early morning, did the dog go outside at all?
No.
And you mentioned that there are train tracks that run sort of close to your property, is that correct?
Yes.
And is that just the commuter rail, or does
He already
someone
said-
go by, or anything else?
He already said it was a
I
commuter
believe
rail.
there is, in addition to the commuter rail, there's other trains that use that track, yes.
Is that going to be relevant
And
to
how
anything?
often, sort of on a daily basis do trains go by your house on Fairview Road?
So it depends, I guess, schedule-wise, if it's the middle of the week or if it's the weekend. But, you know, on any given day, they can go by 5 or 6 times, you know, morning, you know, more towards the rush hour times, morning, at night.
It
And
might be
then
why the dog didn't
sometimes
go
at
nuts
night and sometimes
over
during
other
the day.
sounds
So
if the trains
really
are going by.
all day and night.
And when the trains go by, about how loud is that as far as from?
Yeah, it might be.
So
getting to the point. That the
it's
dog
loud, although having lived there
isn't reactive.
for a period of time, I feel like at least I'm kind of immune to the sound. I don't really hear it as much anymore.
So something essentially based on how long you've lived there, you really don't even hear it anymore?
Not really, no.
Okay. I lived right by an airport.
Now,
I
you
heard
let the
that
dog
shit
out,
all
bring
the
dog
time.
back upstairs, and then where did you go from there?
So after I brought the dog up,
But I
I just
understand
came
filling
back
it out.
down and hung out with everybody else.
And where within your house was everybody else sort of situated?
So everybody was in the kitchen, and then we have a connecting dining room, but it's opened. It's only, you know, a difference of 5 feet. And then we have the family room den that's adjacent to the kitchen. But they're all close proximity.
So the kitchen and the dining room are sort of the same room, is that correct?
Yes.
And as far as what if anything is between the kitchen and dining room and the living room that you were talking about?
So there's a wall, but there's a doorway. So there's really no barrier to go from the kitchen dining room into the family room.
So if somebody's standing in the family room and somebody's standing in the kitchen dining area, they can sort of see each other?
Yes.
Oh, God bless.
Now,
Lolly.
in the kitchen area where everybody was, or in the kitchen dining room area, do you recall sort of where people were and what they were doing around that time?
Yeah, I think people were just sitting around, you know, having drinks. Someone had a speaker and they were listening to music and just talking and hanging out.
And as far as the sort of group and sort of the overall mood or demeanor of the group back at the house, how would you describe that?
Pleasant, fun. Everybody was having a good time. You know, we were wishing Brian a happy birthday and everything was going great.
And at any point in time, while this was all going on, did you, other than your situation with the dog, was there any point in time where you were not with the group in the kitchen dining area?
No, I was there basically for the whole night, except I think at one point I may have shown Brian Higgins some photos that were in my son's room that were upstairs.
And what kind of photos were we talking?
So my son Jack, who's one of the twins, was in the Marines or is in the Marines, and we had put some plaques and some stuff in his room upstairs. And Brian Higgins was prior military, as am I, and I thought he would want to see the photos, so I had him look at them.
I mean, okay. That's
and
fair.
for that period of time that you were outside of sort of the kitchen dining room area looking at the photos with Mr. Higgins, about how long a period of time was he talking?
Very, very quickly, you know, 2 minutes, maybe 3 minutes.
Now, at some point over the course of that morning, things started to sort of wind down at your home. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Why, where there's a lot of details Lolly gets into that he doesn't need to, but where he went with Brian Higgins, I think will matter because the prosecution's trying to kind of cut off the defense arguing, but Brian Higgins and Brian Albert disappeared. The witnesses say there was a period where they were not there. So trying to explain where they went in the house will matter as we get into, I think, the defense timing of where Brian Higgins and Brian Albert could have been when they weren't with the group. So that's why he's getting into those details, which we don't know exactly when in the evening. We don't know if it's after the McCabe's arrived or not, but that's why it matters, because they are trying to figure in the gaps of where people were. So that's why he's asking about it.
And about what time was that things started to wind down, people started to leave?
I think Brian left at around 1:30. I believe he
We
was
haven't talked about the
the
McCabe's
first
at
to
all.
leave. And then others left after that.
We
When you
kind of
say
know he
others
must have left
after
earlier.
that, After Mr. Higgins left your house, where did you?
Higgins had to leave slightly earlier than 1:30 because I think 1:30 is when he arrived back at Canton PD.
So after Brian left, I had gone upstairs and hung out and watched TV up in my bedroom.
You had a long day that day. Is that fair to say?
Yes, I had the funeral in New York that morning. We had the long drive back, and we had been out, and now we're hanging out at my house, and it had been a long day. Yes.
And the only people left was my wife, her sister,
And so
her sister's husband, and I
at
was
any
done.
point in time, after you went upstairs after Mr. Higgins left, did you come back downstairs at all?
Yes, I think I popped back down at one point just to see kind of how long people were going to be there, and then went back up.
Was it to see how long people were going to be there, or was it to ask them to GFO? Because at 1:30 in the morning, it might have been a, hey guys, adorable that you're still here, but also.
When you popped back down, how many people were still there?
I think Jen and Matt was still there, and the two Brian's two friends were still there, and my daughter Caitlin.
Now, as far as beyond Mr. Higgins when he left, was there any other occasion that you can recall where somebody from your house went outside and then came back?
Yes.
And who was that?
So while we were hanging out, I believe the girl Julie Nagel's brother came to the house. I never saw him, but I could hear them saying that he was out front. And I think Julie Nagel had walked outside to talk to him.
And at some point after she walked outside, she came back inside. Is that correct?
Yes.
And about how long a period of time, if you know, was she outside?
I didn't really.
Julie Nagel is one of the friends. Dana asked a question in the chat that I thought was important. Why invite people over in the first place? I get the sense that that was a decision made by his wife and not necessarily by him. Because people were talking about going to the pizza place. And then I am getting the sense that it was Jen McCabe that was like, I mean, it's Brian's birthday. We should all go over to your house. So not his wife, sorry, his wife's sister. That's kind of the sense I'm getting, that Jen McCabe is like, we'll go over to your guys' place, right? We'll see what her testimony is, but that's the sense I get, that he was not the one inviting people over. His wife maybe mentioned it to her sister that the kids were over there, and then the sister was like, we're all gonna go. So now we also have Brian Albert Jr.'s friends, Julie's brother, showing up. So there's that.
They pay attention to how long it was. I don't think it was
I wanted
that
less
long.
people in my house.
And as far as the outside of your house, after you had let Chloe out and back in, what, if any, observations did you make outside of your house? Did you look out? Did you see anything outside of the house?
Just that we have windows in the back of the kitchen area. You could just see that it was snowing.
Is that sort of like a bay window in the kitchen?
Yes, it's a large bay window in the kitchen.
When you look out the bay window in the kitchen, what part of your property does that face?
So it's the backyard. You can see the backyard.
He said
The bulkhead is right under that bay window. And
What?
you pretty much have a view of the whole backyard if it's in the daytime, but it was obviously a little dark.
So can you see the front of the house at any part of the front of the house when you're looking out the bay window?
No.
So at any point in time over the course of the evening, did you look out front to see anything out in front of your house?
No.
Now, at any point in time over the course of the evening, did you hear anything from front of the house, the back of the house, anywhere around the house that drew your attention outside?
No.
Now, at any point in time during the evening, did you know or did you become aware of either John O'Keefe or the defendant Karen Reed coming over to your house?
No.
And at no point in time over the course of that evening or the early morning there, did John O'Keefe or Karen Reed physically come into your house?
John O'Keefe and Karen Reed never entered my house.
And so you go up to bed.
Just because Ollie said, are you aware of them ever physically coming to your house? Were they spiritually there? Were they metaphysically there? Lolly? What? Did they ever physically come to your house? No, but emotionally, we were all there. Okay.
And the group is still sort of downstairs, is that correct?
Yes.
And at some point, your wife, Nicole, you share a bedroom with, did she come upstairs?
Yes.
And do you know about what time that was?
It was probably 2-ish. Not exactly sure, but around 2 or 2 o'clock.
And the
Were you
doors
still
to your
up?
house, is, as far as the front doors and the back doors, is that, what is sort of the situation with regard to locking the doors before everybody goes to bed?
Can you rephrase that?
With, when you
Lisa,
lived at
that's a
34
good
Fairview
question.
Road, there were a number of doors to the house.
Didn't
including
he have
two doors to the
scanners?
front, correct?
Yes.
Nobody's
And
asked.
How was
I don't
that, let me ask you this. Would it be unusual for the front doors of your house to remain unlocked overnight?
No.
So where are
That's
your
something
cameras?
that happened on occasion where people were supposed to lock the doors but didn't lock the doors.
Yes, from time to time, the doors, people would just forget to lock them, or we just didn't lock them.
And you had cameras
And,
where?
So your wife comes up to your bedroom about 2 a.m. or so. As far as you knew, was everybody else had left the house at that point?
Yes.
And you're up for a period of time with your wife, is that correct?
Yes.
And over the course of that time, so sort of following 2 o'clock in the morning, do you recall any sort of phone call or phone conversation with Mr. Higgins or anybody else?
No.
And at some point you fall asleep, do you recall about when that was?
Do you recall a phone call with Mr. Higgins or anyone else? What do you want to bet the phone logs show a phone call based on that question?
I don't. But it was obviously after 2 because that's when she came upstairs. We watched TV and kind of hung out together for a while, and then went to sleep.
And the dog, Chloe, was she up in the room where you had brought her up before?
Yes.
She was there overnight, is that correct?
Yes.
Now, turning your attention to later on that morning or the beginning of that morning, the daytime morning of January 29th.
The daytime morning as opposed to the other type of
Obviously, at some
morning?
point you wake up, correct?
Yes.
And what is it that wakes you up?
I like the nighttime morning.
I was awoken that morning to my sister-in-law, Jen, had burst into my room.
And do you know about what time that was?
The
It was
daytime morning.
it was early in the morning, between 6 and 6:30, I would say.
And fair to say that's not a normal occurrence.
No.
And when she burst into your room, can you describe her demeanor or sort of how she appeared when she first came in?
She was very upset, almost hysterical.
And
Yet she
what, if
was
anything,
so calm
she said when
outside.
she came into the room?
Can somebody,
She said,
when, if any time, did Jen McCabe become hysterical? Because law enforcement said nothing about that. Nothing at all. Like, nothing at all.
something to the effect,
I'm gonna let you finish in a second. Chat has also asked and answered a great question. Also, your brother-in-law is a law enforcement officer. Is busting into their room really what you want to do and wake them up? Maybe knocking, maybe yelling their names, but busting down the door seems potentially, with someone who is ex-military and law enforcement, like a potentially problematic situation. I don't know. So any of you that are law enforcement or married to law enforcement or friends and family of law enforcement, again, chat brought it up and I was like, you make an excellent point, because chat is bae, obviously. You make an excellent point. Are you busting into your brother-in-law's bedroom that way and waking them up out of what we assume to be a dead-ass sleep? Seems like a problem. And the dog did not care.
It was early in the morning, between 6 and 6:30, I would say.
And fair to say that's not a normal occurrence.
No.
And when she burst into your room, can you describe her demeanor or sort of how she appeared when she first came in?
She was very upset, almost
So
hysterical.
also with 5 kids, maybe
And
he is not as
what, if
reactive as
anything,
some.
did she say when she came into the room?
She said something to the effect,
No objection?
John is dead.
Objection.
There it is.
Next question, please, sustain. Unless you lay a foundation.
Unless you
Do
lay
know
a
who she was
foundation.
referring to when she initially comes into your room?
I initially did not.
And at some point during the course of that conversation, does Ms. McCabe make reference to going downstairs?
Yes.
And prior to that, not the content of the conversation, but as far as the length of the conversation, about how long was that length of the conversation that occurred in your bedroom between yourself, Ms. McCabe, and your wife?
Probably a minute.
What, if anything,
And
did you
the
notice at
demeanor
that
you
time?
described as far as Ms. McCabe was
Police
concerned,
lights?
almost hysterical. Was that continuous throughout that initial conversation?
Yes. She
Really?
was very upset.
And
None of the other law enforcement said she was
If
upset at
anyone
all.
did she indicate was downstairs, or why did you go downstairs?
She said that the police.
Objection.
There's some going to allow in with that foundation.
It's for the.
She said that the police were
an exception.
downstairs.
And so you went downstairs to talk to them.
Yes.
And
It's not for the truth.
when you go downstairs,
It's to explain his action.
what do you see when you get to sort of the bottom of the stairs?
I saw a Canton police officer downstairs.
So inside your house at that point?
Yes.
Who let him
And the
in?
door to your house, was it still open or shut or something?
I don't remember.
And the Canton police officer that's inside your home, did you recognize him?
Yes.
And who did you recognize him?
Last name Lank. So Officer Lank.
Was he someone that you were familiar with?
like
I
the way
knew
he says
who
Lank.
he was. Yes.
Did you?
Did Lank
socialize
just
or
walk in?
friend or anything like that?
I didn't socialize with him. I knew him to be a Canton police officer. I had met him, multiple times, and I knew him to know my brother Chris.
I knew that he
And
knew my
so
brother.
Knew him is essentially what I'm asking. Knew him in a professional capacity, personal capacity, or a little bit of both.
I would say more of a professional capacity, and I knew of him, but did not hang out with him socially.
And
Because
initially,
everyone knows
when you
everyone.
first,
Or
see
everyone knows who
Officer
everyone
Lank
knows.
by himself, or who, if any, other officers are with him.
I believe initially he was by himself.
Did another officer join yourself and Officer Lank at some point?
Yes, I believe another officer came into the house.
You know who that officer is?
I don't.
And as far as them coming into your house, they were welcome in your house? You didn't say get out or close the door or anything like that?
No, of course they were welcome in my house.
Of course they were welcome in my house. So if they had asked you if they could have looked around, you probably would have said yes, yet no one asked.
And where did you go with the officer sort of in your house? Where did you spoke with the officer, I'm presuming?
Yes, we spoke in the kitchen area.
He said he
And
didn't
when
speak to
you're
people in the
speaking
kitchen
with
until the
officer in
third
the
time he
kitchen
came
area,
back.
Who is there?
So my wife Nicole, her sister Jen, and I believe Jen's husband Matt arrived almost the same time that I came downstairs, maybe a minute after.
This is like the third time law enforcement comes
And,
into the house,
how
though.
long a period of time was this conversation that occurred in the kitchen of your house?
I don't remember the exact time. I wouldn't want to guess. I don't remember. He was 10, 15, 20 minutes maybe initially.
And when you say initially, was there a subsequent conversation that occurred after that?
Yes. The Officer Lank returned to the house sometime after that.
And when he returned sometime after that, was he alone or was there another officer?
I believe that time he was with Lieutenant Gallagher, perhaps.
And were you familiar with Lieutenant Gallagher prior to that one?
I knew who Lieutenant Gallagher was on a professional level. I had not hung out with them on a social level.
And again, they were welcomed into your home and you spoke with them, is that correct?
Yes, the second time they were there, they were invited back to the house via a phone call.
And that second
Who invited them
conversation
back?
within your house, where did that?
Same area, family room, kitchen area.
And if you know about how long a period of conversation was that second come back to the house?
That may have been longer, maybe a half hour.
Now,
That's the time they said they went back specifically to speak to
that
Jen.
initial conversation, as far as, so it's yourself, it's Mr. and Mrs. McCabe, your wife, and then the police, is that correct?
Myself, my wife Nicole, my sister-in-law Jen, her husband Matt had arrived, and the police. Yes.
And in between that first speaking with the police and the second time that the police came back to your house, who, if anyone, did you call or notify in regard to the situation that was going on in front of your house?
I called Brian Higgins
Why did you call Brian?
because I think it was important for him to know what was going on and that what had happened.
And as far as you knew with reference to Mr. O'Keefe and Ms. Reed, what, if any, relationship, friendship, anything were you aware of between Mr. Higgins and either Mr. O'Keefe or Ms. Reed?
I was not aware too much about a relationship with Brian and either person. Brian had mentioned maybe even that night that he was friendly and knew John. I knew of no relationship between Brian and the defendant.
Interesting way to say that, isn't
Following
it?
your conversation with Mr. Higgins, who, if anyone else, came over your house?
So Brian Higgins eventually came over to my house, and my sister-in-law Julie also arrived at my house.
And do you know why your sister-in-law Julie came by your house that night?
Yes.
And why was that?
So she has a routine that when it's someone's birthday, she likes to come by and bring like coffee and donuts. So it was Brian's birthday that night. So my sister-in-law Julie was coming by to drop off some donuts and coffee, I think.
And where was Julie when you first saw her that morning?
She was out front in the driveway.
And what, if anything, did you ask Julie to do when you saw her out in the driveway?
I asked her to come inside.
And when she came inside, is that when you informed her of what had happened?
Yes, I don't know if it was necessarily me that informed her, but people that were there were explaining to her what happened. It was a very, very chaotic, unbelievably chaotic morning.
And as far
You've
as
been a police officer
when
for
that
how
was
long,
described, to your sister-in-law Julie, how would you describe sort of her demeanor or her reaction?
Yeah,
to
the coffee's new,
news
but
regarding Mr. O'Keefe?
Shock.
he did say it was his routine, her routine to bring coffee and donuts. She didn't say she was bringing donuts, I think, or coffee. I think he's going off of past, not what he saw this morning. He just wasn't surprised to see her.
Chaotic, unbelievably chaotic morning.
And as far as when that was described to your sister-in-law Julie, how would you describe sort of her demeanor or her reaction to the news regarding Mr. O'Keefe?
Shock. That's how I would describe it. Everybody's reaction that morning was utter shock. And she was upset and looked very, very in shock.
And so the second time that the Canton police officers come back to your home, who was there at that point?
I know I was there.
Oh, sorry, that was user error. But I see the point in the chat. A lot of you are saying during all this chaos, how is the dog responding?
For sure. My wife, Nicole, Jen, her husband, Matt. Brian Higgins may have been there at that time. And I'm not sure about Julie. Julie at one point left the house, and I think she came back later in the morning. But so I'm not sure if she was there.
And at some point when your sister-in-law Julie came back to your house, who, if anyone, came to your house with her?
Her husband, my brother Chris, who's her husband.
Was this before or after the second time that the police had been at your house?
I believe they came back after the second time, but I'm not 100% sure. The first time that Julie came with the coffee, the police were not there.
Again with the coffee. Interesting. It's the first time we've heard of coffee. Was she going to put the coffee in the car? Doesn't make any sense.
When you first sort of get up, you come downstairs, and the police they're basically in your doorway. Is that correct?
Yes.
Could you see outside as far as what was going on outside at that time?
Not from downstairs, but I had looked out the window after Jen had come up into my room and explained what had happened, and before I went there.
What did you see?
Sorry, that was
I
me.
could see
That's not your
at
internet.
least one police vehicle. I could see that there was something going on out front, and that was about it. And I just went straight downstairs.
At that time that you looked out your window, did you see either an ambulance or a fire truck out there?
I don't remember if I saw a ambulance. There were emergency vehicles out there, but I can't remember exactly which types.
And at any point in time, at that time or subsequent throughout the course of the day,
Do you have your phone up there? What are you
did
looking at?
Go out to that area of your yard where you saw the cruisers and the.
I'm not sped up,
sort of
but he, like,
No,
what he was
And
looking
why?
at.
I didn't see that there was a reason to go out to that area. The police had already been in my house. They had already talked to us about what was going on. It was a snowstorm at that point. They were trying to conduct an investigation, and I didn't want to interfere with it or have anything to do with it.
Didn't want anything to
As far
do
as
with
what
it.
you're learning, sort of when Jennifer McCabe first
That I
comes sort
believe.
of verging in
100%.
into your bedroom at 6 to 6:30 in the morning. At any point around there, were you made aware of where John O'Keefe was at that point?
Yes,
And what were you made aware of?
I was made aware that he was taken to the hospital.
So by the time that you're awoken by Mrs. McCabe, John O'Keefe is, to your knowledge, not outside.
To my knowledge, I believed he was on the way to the hospital.
Now, later on in the course of that day, at some point, did you have occasion to speak with some troopers from the state police?
Yes.
And if you recall, who is it that you spoke with?
So I spoke with Trooper, last name Proctor, and then another trooper, and I don't know the last name, first name Yuri.
Yeah, don't get that one wrong. We did that this morning.
Mechanic?
It could be.
And had you met either of those troopers prior to that date?
I had never met Trooper Proctor. I had met Trooper, I forget, what is the last name?
You met Trooper Yuri?
Yuri. I had met him once or twice before.
Trooper B.
Was that in a professional capacity?
Yes.
And where did you
Gonna leave it at
speak
that.
with him on that day?
At my sister-in-law Jen's house.
And if you recall, about what time of day was it that you spoke with him?
It was late morning, early afternoon.
Why were you at your sister Jen's house when you were talking to Trooper Proctor and Trooper B? And was it the same day that they interviewed your wife at your house? And then why didn't you just talk to them at your house? So, okay. But for those of you mentioning he's been looking down, like down into the side, it looks to me like somebody would be looking at a phone. I'm not saying he's looking at a phone, but that's the kind of, it's just an odd looking down that's gone on throughout his testimony. Yes, I've noticed. I only commented on it once because I didn't want to send a shockwave of speculation, but it's just noted.
The day of the incident, so I don't know the exact.
Why
I
were
don't
you
know
at
the
Jen's
exact
house?
time. Before noon, I think.
And why was it that later on that day that you were over your sister-in-law, Jennifer McCabe?
Thanks for asking.
When my sister-in-law Jen and her husband Matt were leaving my house, my sister-in-law was distraught. I wanted to be comforting to them and be there for them if they needed anything, and I drove to their house.
And this is, and speaking of your sister-in-law, Jennifer, this is someone you've known since she was how old?
7 years old. She's like a little sister to me.
And at the point that you're going over to the house, did you know that there were going to be troopers from the state police over at the house?
Yes.
And fair to say they asked to talk to you, is that correct?
Yes.
Did you go over to Jen's house because you knew they were going to be questioned by the troopers?
And do you know who, if anyone else, they spoke to at your sister-in-law's house that day?
I believe they spoke with Jen, my sister-in-law Jen, and then her husband Matt, and then myself.
And so was that done sort of in a group setting, or was it separate or something else?
Separate.
Oh, finally.
And so they spoke to you in one area of the house while Jennifer and Matthew McCabe were in another area of the house, and vice versa for you?
Yes, I spoke with them at the dining room table, and Jen and Matt were not present. I believe they may have been upstairs or somewhere else in the house.
And if you know, where were you when the troopers were talking to either Jennifer McCabe or Matthew?
So I was upstairs when they were being spoken to.
Were they being spoken to together? He wouldn't know he was upstairs.
So I may have one moment.
It really does look
Yes.
like he's looking at something. Like it just does.
May I approach her?
Yes.
After review them and look up.
Sure.
Court is probably already done for the day based on the time, but we're going to go through the end of testimony since we started a little late so I can pick up my kiddo. These are probably the same photos that we've previously seen. I like that everybody brought their readers today. I like the readers.
Marked as exhibits 58 through 65.
It's a very thorough
Generally
investigation
speaking, do you
of
recognize
photos.
What's depicted in those photographs?
Yes.
And what do you recognize it to be?
So the photos appear to be the front yard in front of my old house at 34 Fairview Road.
And from those photographs, they appear to be a fair and accurate portrayal of what your house and your yard looked like around that time. Is that correct?
Yes.
Your Honor, with court's permission, I would ask to publish those for the jury to discuss with the witness briefly.
Are they different than the ones? They're the same ones we saw last time.
Ms. Gilman, if you could start with exhibit 58.
So we're going to ask questions about this. Chips and salsa, what's the cause of death? We don't know yet.
Mr. Albert, sir, there should be on the desk.
Prosecution has not put that in evidence yet.
Actually, we already talked
I have that, yes.
We know from opening statements, which are not evidence, that
so
hypothermia was a
What's up on the
factor,
screen currently? Do you recognize, is that
Including a
what's depicted in exhibit 58?
skull fracture. But that's from opening. So technically
I
not
have,
evidence.
have them out of order here. Just give me 1 sec.
Oh, we're not going to finish this direct today. We're going to be getting into the rest of this direct and the cross on
So yes, this
Monday.
looks like the photo exhibit 58 that you handed me.
And this is a photograph of your house, sort of, if I'm standing on the street to the left side of the property, correct?
Yes.
And on this sort of left side of your property, let me ask you this first. As far as between the roadway of Fairview Road and your front lawn, is there anything there as far as a sidewalk or anything like that?
No, there's no sidewalk. So the grass area goes right to the curb, and then there's the street.
And the curb that's in between the grass and the roadway, is that like a straight curb, a straight edge curb, granite curbing, or like rounded curbing? How would you describe that?
I would just describe it as a regular curbing. It's not granite. It's the color is black, so it seems like a tar curbing.
And in this area of the left side of your property, what if anything of note is sort of in that area of the property?
So in that area of the property, first of all, that's basically the property line from the neighbor's house. If you're staring at my house from the front, the neighbor to the left, that's the property line area. But there's a fire hydrant there. There is a flagpole with the American flag and the Marine Corps flag. And there is we call it like an electrical box, but I'm not sure what the purpose of it is.
And so for all the years that you've lived there, either as a child or as an adult, you really don't know what that electrical box does or what it is?
Yes, I don't know if it's operable. Sometimes the door is open. If it's windy, the door of the box blows open, and sometimes it's closed, and, we don't really have much to do with it.
It was a shocking lack of curiosity.
And the general area where, when you looked out the window in your bedroom on the morning of the 29th, as far as where
Their
you
bedrooms
saw
are those top rows of
vehicles,
windows.
cruisers, do you see that in this photograph?
Yes, that's the same general area.
The same general area as you were describing with the fire hydrant, flagpole, things like that.
Yes.
Ms. Gilman, if I could have the next exhibit 59.
Celia asked in the chat, why does the curb shape matter? I think it's going
Again, sir, what's up on the screen? Is that what you
To-
have for you?
maybe sort of
What was it,
kinda,
59?
maybe sort of kinda tie into how could Karen have backed up? These aren't curbs that are large enough that are going to stop a large SUV from backing into a yard or whatever. So I think that's why the type of curb matters, but we haven't even gotten close to talking about anybody's car backing up, but that it would be my supposition,
Yes.
knowing their theory of the case.
From this photograph, sir, this is again a picture of your residence around the time of January 29th, correct?
When
Yes.
were these pictures taken?
Fair to say this is taken after some of the snow has sort of melted from the storm before. If you can tell.
I don't know if it melted
Yes,
or
it
if
appears that
somebody moved
there's less
it.
snow in the front there.
So less snow than what you saw when you looked out your window or.
What, if any,
later
date?
morning of the 29th.
Lolly.
Yes.
And from this photograph, if you could just direct the jury's attention to the driveway and the garages and sort of where.
Why?
that
Why? His wife already showed everybody where the driveway is, where the cars are. Why again?
So
Why?
my driveway was this area right here, and that's the garage doors.
He said, does this look like your house around the time of January 29th? He didn't say the pictures were taken January 29th. So it's subtle, but it's different. Did your house look like this around the 29th? Yes. But he's never said that the pictures were taken because we don't know who took them, because he's never admitted that in evidence. So it's not clear. They're consistent.
From within this photograph as well.
But it could have been later, a day or two.
One that leads into a foyer area and the other leads into a living room of some kind.
Could have been
You
the
could direct
29th.
the jury's attention to where each of those doors would be on the house.
Sure.
We already know this from the
So
wife.
the door right here we consider it the front door, and that goes into a foyer area. And then, not from this photo, you can't really see it, but there's a door in this, I guess, breezeway area, and that opens up into the family room.
And one last thing from this photograph, sir, if the window that you were looking out, see that window in this photograph as well, and can you draw the jury's attention to?
Yes, I
The front window or the back
believe
window?
it would be this one right here. Yeah, in the corner.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Gilman, if I could have the next exhibit number 60.
You say 60?
60. And so what's up on the screen, do you recognize that as what you have before you as exhibit 60?
Yes.
And from this photograph, as far as the roadway and the sort of width of the road from the curb to the double yellow line there, is that generally what it was on January 29th, as that's what the roadway looked like?
The morning of the 29th?
Well, the morning of the 29th, it was snow, correct?
Right.
Is
So
that
the roadway,
consistent?
I believe, would have had some snow on it.
So what I'm asking is, when you came home that evening or the early morning,
Hey, Lolly, you know how we would know the distance from the double yellow line to the curb line? You want to, you know how we would know that? If some of the investigators had measured any of it.
On the 29th. Is that essentially what the roadway looked like, absent whatever the snow was covering?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
The next photograph, Ms. Gilbert.
Rebecca said the phrase running down the clock comes to mind. Yep, we're late afternoon on a Friday, and he's asking all the same shit he already asked.
Exhibit 61, is that correct, sir?
1 second.
Over and over again. So for those of you asking, do we know how far from the curb to where the
Yes.
victim was? Only from
Essentially a closer
EMTs giving an estimate.
image of the area of the fire hydrant and electrical box and the flagpole that you were talking about.
And
before.
the
Yes.
shrubbery.
And Ms. Gilman, if I could have the next photograph. And
Fire
again, what's
hydrant.
up on the screen, this would be
Thingy.
I lost my train of thought. Is this
62.
62? Oh, Lolly, you're just asking the same questions you asked
62.
earlier.
So you
No
were
train of thought
mentioning
needed.
earlier in your testimony that the area where you saw the police cruisers when you looked out your window on the morning of the 29th was near sort of where your property abuts the neighboring property, correct?
Yes.
And do you happen to know what number that next door neighbor's house is? Up or down from 34?
I honestly don't. I don't know what number that is.
And
Sir, this is the house that you grew up in as a child and then lived in as an adult with your family. And you are telling me that you do not know the number of the home next door? Sir, you've lived in this house for over 40 years, and your house number is 34. And not to be disrespectful, but you seem to be of the you know, you seem to be part of my generation, of the X side of my generation, which means we were kind of feral. So as a child, you would have roamed and
do you see sort of the property line in between your house and the next door neighbor's house?
this is tough.
Yes,
for
I
me.
believe that row of
just-
trees
I-
is the property line.
So the row of evergreen trees there is sort of where it delineates between your property and the next door neighbor.
Yes, they appear to be in line from almost the street to the white fence.
Have you ever seen those trees
And that
before?
white fence sort of in the back right of that photograph, is that the fence that you were talking about before that encloses your backyard?
Yes.
So that's his fence back there.
The next photograph, Ms. Gilman, number 63.
He didn't ask him how tall the fence is, but that's the fence back there. Detective, you really don't know the
Again,
house
this
number
is
next
just another
door?
photograph of sort of that area
I'm
of
just
your yard, is that
so
correct?
sorry.
1 second. Sorry. Yes.
Now, with reference to this area of the yard at your house when you were living there at 34 Fairview Road, is that an area of the yard that would be of particular use, or did you go in that area of the yard all that much?
No, we didn't really use that area too often. There's a large wood chip bed. You can't see it because of the snow, but it kind of covers that area. So we don't really go over there that often.
And now, so with reference to this area of the yard, was there any sort of overhead, like ambient lighting, street lights?
Were the
anything
trees
like
on
that
your
in that
property
area?
or the neighbor's property?
No, so that's a very dark part of the yard. There's no street light there at all.
And the next photograph, Ms. Gilman. Mr. Albert, I believe this would be number 64. Is
One
that
of the
correct?
most Boston
Yes.
sentences in this trial so
And
far.
with reference to this, can you describe to the jury what are we looking at in this particular photograph, Exhibit 64?
So that's the front right door, I guess you could say, to the house. And again, you can't see the door, but it's inside that breezeway area to the left.
If you could, just use the laser pointer.
Can you tell
yeah.
us what animal seems to be in that door?
So the door would be right in here.
And then the other door goes where? Or are those bushes? Oh, those might be bushes.
From the driveway leading up to that front
Not
door
an
area
animal.
you were talking about with the
Chat. It's this because the light has changed in the courtroom. The thing that formerly looked like a cat is a closed door that is dark in color, and then the bushes that are, or the shrubbery that is coming out of the snow has little prongy things. So it's the dead plant. Yes. Earlier it was much harder to see. This is much easier to see just because the light in the courtroom, the light has shifted from the sun blasting the screen. So much easier to see now.
What, if anything, is sort of leading you up to the steps there?
To the other door,
To the other door, the front.
there's a brick walkway.
So brick walkway leading up the brick steps into the foyer area of your house.
Yes.
And the last in this set, Ms. Goodman, Mr. Albert, this would be number 65.
What?
Do you recognize what's depicted in this photograph, sir?
No.
Yes.
Is it the fire
What
hydrant?
do you recognize?
So that's the
Hold on. I was trying
picture
to move
of the ground in front of the fire hydrant, which is to the left front of my yard.
You can take that down. Thank you very much. Now, Mr. Albert, with
How does he know that that's his fire hydrant?
the days that sort of followed from January 29th, as far as your home was concerned, was what, if any, sort of police presence did you observe or notice sort of in that area in the front yard of your home?
So over the course of the next couple of days, there were emergency vehicles and police personnel that day and days following in front of the house.
So later on in the afternoon of the 29th and continuing on for days after, is that correct?
Yes.
And what, if anything, did you observe as far as the weather was concerned between the date of the 29th and the days that the police presence was outside of your house?
Mm.
I believe it rained a few times during that time.
And as far as the snow that had been piled up on your front lawn, what, if anything, was occurring with the snow as the days went on following the 29th?
I believe so. Some of the snow was shoveled out, I believe, during the crime scene, and then some of the snow was just dissipating due to the fact that it was melting and it had rained a bunch of days.
Now, sir, if I could turn your attention to your house, and obviously at some point you moved from the house on Fairview in Canton to Norwood, correct?
Yes.
And when was that sort of first discussed between you and your wife as far as selling the house?
That was discussed in October, November of, it would have been 2021.
And what was it that sort of precipitated that discussion as far as selling your house?
Around that time, and it was post-COVID, the housing market seemed really good. And my brother, Chris, had sold his house, was in the process, and ultimately sold his house around that time. He got a great deal on it. I had known some other people that had sold around that time. And it was a little early for us because our children weren't all necessarily gone yet. But it was close, and we thought we could get a good deal for the house, so that's when we started exploring it.
And who, if anyone, did your brother Christopher put you in touch with?
So he put me in touch with a realtor that ultimately sold his house.
Is the realtor going to come in?
And at some point you sold the house?
I did.
And when was that?
So we didn't end up selling until April of 2023.
When was it listed?
And as far as prior to selling the house, what, if any,
When was it listed, though?
did the sale of your house have anything to do with what occurred there on January 29, 2022?
Absolutely not.
When was it listed?
May I have just one moment now?
Yes.
Okay. Is there anything else? That was kind of his last line of questioning with the last witness, which is kind of going to run, is kind of sort of
Just a second.
going to run out the clock.
Nothing further.
Yeah, for the day.
Nothing further for this witness, Your Honor.
All right. Can I see counsel at sidebar for just a second, please?
They're going to probably talk about scheduling of the witnesses. And we will see what the court wraps up with. This is going to be end of the day. Chad, I know you guys can Zillow when the house was listed. It's not in evidence before the jury. I'm just curious if they're going to put it in evidence before the jury. But we will see. The prosecution hasn't asked for that information yet. And the defense hasn't asked on cross. We'll see if they do. It's a long sidebar. Just to excuse the jury and then talk to that. It's Friday. Just excuse the jury and talk to the lawyers.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, so Jones, rather than start cross-examination of Mr. Albert, we're going to let you break for the day. And I did want to give you some scheduling updates.
Oh, thank
because
God.
There have been questions from you folks and requests. So originally, so next week will be a full
Okay, we're going to get to scheduling, so I'm going to pause this so I can take notes because this court schedule has not been easy to keep up with.
week. We're here every day next week. Again, Monday, Wednesday, Friday will be full days. I'd like us to pick up the pace a little bit here. No repetitive testimony so that we
Ma'am, you need to stare directly at the prosecution. Directly. Just stare directly at Lolly. Don't talk to the class in general on this one. We all need to pick up the pace. Stare directly at the prosecutor. We need to pick up the pace. Ma'am, just look directly at his face. She's probably telling him at sidebar, but
we can move things along, but we are moving things along. So Monday, Wednesday, and Friday will be full days. Tuesdays and Thursday next week will be half days. The week I wanted to address with you,
Labor Day.
we were already going to be off the 29th and 31st of that week. There's been a request and it makes sense. We will now take the 29th, 30th, and 31st off rather than have you folks come in. So you'll get 3 full days, sort of maybe in the middle of this trial to be able to just regroup. I figured everybody was welcome those days, but I am going to ask you to give us a full day on the 28th. So think about that this weekend. So the Tuesday will be a full day, and then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you'll be down. Okay? June 7th, we're off. We will end June 6th at noon instead of 1 o'clock. Okay? All right. So I do have to give you those 3 cautions. Please do not discuss this case with anyone. Don't do any independent research or investigation into this case. If you happen to see, hear, or read anything about this case, please disregard it. I always like to tell jurors, just leave everything here. Your notebooks, literally, figuratively, just leave it here. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you Monday morning.
Rise for the jury.
And with that, we now know we have some days. We have some days off around. We have some days off around Memorial Day. Court will be wicked dark. The 29th, 30th, and 31st. There will be a full day on the 28th instead of a half day on that Tuesday. The court will be ending early June 6th and off June 7th. Thank you. If we are going to be here till July, this is going to run right into the Baldwin schedule or trial.
In session. Any other evidentiary issues I should be prepared to spend some time on this weekend?
Not for the Commonwealth, no.
No, we can wait on that.
I heard you say we can wait on that, but I'd like to know, is there anything that I should be taking a look at?
Right, no, I wasn't, I was talking about something different. I think with regard to Brian Albert, there's really nothing other than I wanted to talk to my co-counsel over the weekend to get the court to potentially revisit the ruling that you just made, which whether you do or you don't, Your Honor, I think you've heard, we can hear more potential. But with regard to Caitlin Albert, Your Honor, there is the issue of the photos between her and Katie McLaughlin. I just wanted to flag that for the court. I think we've addressed that already, and I think the court had said we'd take them on a photo-by-photo basis.
No, what I said is you need to approach. So before she testifies, let me know where we stand.
Will do.
Okay? Or before your cross-examination.
Will do.
All right. Do we expect to hear from her next week?
Yes.
Okay.
I think probably Monday.
Probably Monday.
Okay.
Probably Monday.
All right. Anything else?
Nope.
All right. Thank
No,
you.
Your Honor. Thank you.
Okay, well, we got some scheduling answered for the jury and for, me. I'm very excited about it for y'all. So you know what court days we have dark. Will I be streaming on the days that we are dark? No, I will need a break. Also, well, no, that's not true. I might do some members only stream. I have an event with YouTube coming up. CrimeCon is coming up. There are other things to do, but Your Honor, thanks so much. So that really isn't Memorial Day, though. Isn't Memorial Day the weekend before that? So I would imagine they'd be off on Memorial Day, which is, am I confused as to, I'm probably confused. Memorial Day is the 27th. So are they going to be off on Monday, or are they just going to be off the 29th, 30th, and 31st? I'm confused. I think Memorial Day is actually probably a state holiday, but I will take a look because I think they'll probably be off the 27th. The jury probably already knows that. They will only be in court then on the 28th. She didn't say that she's going to do a half day on the 24th. I might need to. So I'm interested to see if they will be off. For those of you mentioning that Juneteenth is also a holiday in Massachusetts, that's right. Memorial Day is a federal holiday. My brain is so tired. If we are still in this trial on Juneteenth, I'm going to be so sad. Yes, federal holiday, brain tired. So they will be dark on the 27th. So it seems like we will only have court that week on the 28th. If we are still here, oh God. So full day on the 28th, I think, is the only day they're going to be in court that week. So I hope we're done by then. We might not be done by then. So yes, they're going to have to be off the 27th. That's the only thing that makes sense, which means they're in court the full day on the 28th, which is really going to screw up things I have on my schedule. We're going to have to shift things to the 20th. I'll figure it out. Okay. I'm just going to have to figure it out. I'm not going to talk about my schedule. So I'm hoping that we'll be done by the time we get into Juneteenth. I really hope that we'll be done. So court should be closed the 27th. That makes sense. Let's see. I just saw a question about a motion. I'm going to try to wrap up what I remember from today. I really hope that we're done. Let's see. So they should all be closed. What DMB shows can I go see on the days off? None. I have DMB on the calendar for later in June, but none then. So we're going to talk about these photos. Stephanie, I'm going to save that question when we get to Q&A. Let me see if I can do a wrap up. I don't know if I can. I don't know what happened. Oh, so let's see if we can. We'll see how it goes. It's been a day. My brain is so tired. At the end of trial day 9, we have started we've completed the direct examination of Brian Albert. We have not yet started the cross-examination of Brian Albert. That will start on Monday. We are 2 weeks into this trial. The court is already letting the jurors know which days off they will have in early June. The attorneys originally estimated 4 to 5 weeks for this trial. The court told the jurors 8. I think the court was probably right when the court said 8 weeks. The court also, at the very end of the day today, looked generally at the lawyers and said, you know, if we could start to move it along, maybe not be so repetitive. I think maybe the court needs to address that more directly with the lawyers, either at sidebar, but saying it broadly in front of the jury, I think puts a little more pressure on the prosecution to zoom. We have had some very, very repetitive testimony, and that is what the court is referring to. We don't need 4 witnesses to identify where the driveway is on a house. They've done a jury view. The driveway just is where the fuck it is. Asking another witness another time where the driveway is doesn't change the fact. There are some very large facts in dispute in this case. The location of a driveway is not what's in dispute here. There's stuff, but we're not at all of it yet. At the very end of the day, the defense also noted that they anticipate getting to Caitlin Albert's testimony on Monday. Remember, Caitlin Albert is the daughter of Brian and Nicole Albert, who we've heard from today. She was at the waterfall with everybody and then went back to the Albert house. And she is friends, somebody that I used to know, acquaintances, close friends with paramedic Katie McLaughlin. Why does it matter? Katie McLaughlin, in her testimony, seemed to distance herself substantially from how well she knew Caitlin Albert, if she does, saying, I went to high school with someone named Caitlin Albert. And then it started to come out that they spent time together. Katie McLaughlin kept saying those photos look old, but yes, I see we're in a photo together. I don't remember that photo. And then after court, the interneted, and the defense got a deluge of other photos of Caitlin Albert together with Katie McLaughlin, some that were much more recent. The defense brought that to the court's attention, and the defense is going to want to bring that up with Caitlin Albert. Why does it matter? It seems the testimony of Katie McLaughlin saying, I hit him from the defendant is where everyone else heard that from. It seems that Katie McLaughlin is the one that heard that statement and relayed it to others generally. And so the interconnectedness between Caitlin Albert and Katie McLaughlin comes more relevant to the jury determining the veracity of Katie McLaughlin's testimony, which, if she is the main witness that heard that statement from the defense, and if that statement of the defendant is something that the prosecution is going to be leaning heavily into, then knowing the interconnectedness between those parties becomes very relevant for the jury to determine veracity. The jury can say, doesn't matter to us, she heard what she heard. Or the jury can say, that's suspicious. It's up for the jury to decide. The defense wants them to get to consider the photos. We'll see what the prosecution does with that. But it was a slow tread through direct testimony today. We saw more pictures of the house, but we did see on cross-examination a photorealistic reconstruction or visual exhibit of the front of the house from the street, giving a layout of the Alberts' house that is not from an angle up the street or down the street in any certain way. And that I found to be very helpful. Yes, the jury has had a jury view, but the photos being introduced by the prosecution are either from an angle going the street this way or an angle going this way, or zoomed close up on the house where you can't see where the victim was located. The prosecution did start eliciting that the area where the victim was located is dark, very dark, no street lights, lots of trees, and it is a darker area of the yard. I think that is going to be used to argue that the reason people didn't see the victim as they were coming out of the house is the distance from the side door down the driveway to where the cars were, vis-a-vis where the victim was on the far side of the yard. We will see what more gets made of that. I suspect, by the way the prosecution's been going, that once we are done with all of these witnesses, I think we're going to go through all of the civilian witnesses at once and then get into the expert witnesses. Any cell phone witnesses, search witnesses, the coroner/pathologist, the DUI retrograde extrapolation. I think we're going to get to all of that, or the blood alcohol. I think we're going to get to all of that at the end. So I imagine the beginning of next week and maybe the bulk of next week will be the rest of the individuals. I wonder if they will leave kind of Jen McCabe for the end of all of those individuals. But it seems that we're going to go through the people that were at the Albert's house in the waterfall. And then I imagine that we will get into Jen McCabe and Carrie Roberts' testimony and go from there. So the questions remain. Will anyone say wicked in this court? So far, it hasn't happened. Will Trooper Proctor be called by the prosecution? We don't know yet. And then when, if any time, when, if ever, will we get into the defense case in chief? Not sure yet, but it is, without the expert witnesses going first, it's hard to give a ton of context because we still don't quite know how the prosecution believes Karen Reed hit the defendant with her car. We're just not there yet, but 2 weeks in, it's hard to go through all of the witness testimony, trying to piece together the timeline. It is getting a little bit better with when people left the waterfall and when they got back to the home at 34 Fairview, about a 5-minute drive. So I feel that we are starting to get to some of the timeline, but there's still so much that is unknown. And at the end of the day on Friday, what do you remember from this case? And if you weren't chatting about it with others and engaging in that conversation with me, how much of it would you still remember at this point, 2 weeks in? Because the jurors, when they go home, can't talk about this case. When they talk to other jurors at lunch, they can't talk about the evidence. They can talk about the weather, the games, not the weather during the case, the weather now. They can talk about the sports their kids play or if they watch Vanderpump Rules or whatever, but they can't talk about the evidence in this case. How much harder would that be to remember what has come in this case without having any way to process it except for taking notes and sitting and listening, because some of it is so very repetitive. So with all of that, let's get to your questions. It's nice to see what you guys remember in the chat. Thank you. First, if you guys want to keep up with my court schedule and when I am streaming and when the quick bits go live, which are our daily summaries of this case, you know where to go. LawNerdApp.com, free iOS and Android app for you. We're rolling out some new features in the LawNerd app that some of you already have access to, which is really fun. But LawNerdApp.com will keep you in the loop, and I will update you on the schedule there. I'll send a message about the schedule so you guys have a little heads up of when court is not in session versus when court will be in session, based on what the judge has said now. So hopefully that's helpful. All right, let's get through some of our super chats. Let's see. Heather McGovern said, I think this means intimidating a witness. This isn't you, Heather. This is a known issue on YouTube with the autocorrect and super chats and stuff. Intimidating a witness usually means you don't want them to testify. Aiden was trying to get them to testify to tell the truth, and the DA is fighting that. I don't know anything about the situation. I have not taken a look at everything going around surrounding this case. So the DA charged witness intimidation. That's the extent of what I know on that. And until it came up in court today, have I looked at that more? No, I have not. So I can't comment. I don't know. White clawed up. I need to do that this evening. Made afternoon trial after my last chemo ever. Stationary Geek Kate, congratulations on your last chemo ever. What a wonderful feeling. Congratulations. Kelly Kelsa, just finished my constitutional law exam. 1L done. What, if anything, do you remember from your constitutional law exam? Also, I remember precisely what I did the night my 1L ended, and it involved a lot of Stoli vanilla soda and karaoke. And somebody made Jell-O shots out of champagne. I was surprised, but they were quite good. Silo said, Happy Mother's Day, EDB, and all mothers everywhere. Thank you so much. You've never had a dog? No, Jill, I have never had a dog. My parents were definitely not going to have a dog in the house. And since I have been an adult, we have had cats. Tracy said, my dog goes nuts when a leaf blower is down the street. I mean, by rehoming, does she mean all dogs go to heaven? I don't think that's what they mean on rehoming the dog. I really don't. But of course, there's no way we can know. Tanya said, my dog goes bananas when she sees even a shadow. Look, don't know. How hard does she and her husband sleep, or do they take meds to sleep? That's not been asked. Jeanette said, as someone who has a shepherd, my old girl would have lost her mind. I watched my shepherd watch people pass the house in the middle of the night. That was my impression of shepherds. Kentucky Pondard said, objection, was Chloe a good girl? Chat wants to know. I am still having a hard time that Nicole Albert referred to Chloe, their beloved family dog, as it. So I'm struggling. Xander said, flashing lights aside, sirens not likely that early in the AM, but the gas leaf blower right outside the bedroom at 6 a.m. and the dog wasn't flipping the fuck out. Nope. Xander, you make a good point. And a lot of you who have dogs remembered immediately the leaf blower and were like, look, I don't care if there's sirens or not. There was a leaf blower and it was loud and it wasn't snowing and blowing that hard when the leaf blower was. That's a very fair point to Xander and everyone in the chat who made it. Judge ordered no police uniforms be worn in court. That's fair, but I don't know if the judge ordered that they not, and that happens, that they not refer to the victim by officer. I don't know if they have or not. Never stop. I'm incapable at this point. It's deeply ingrained in my linguistics and my soul. Probably Jupiter said, I don't know what I would have, I don't know that I would have woken up. I sleep and I have if you open my bedroom door too loud, I'm just like, what are you doing? So that is very person by person, but we will see. Jennifer said, I don't know about you, but I would never bust into a police officer's bedroom unannounced. I wouldn't, or my DA friends. So Von Dodd said, we love you, DB, drop those F-bombs. I mean, I definitely will. I am made for headphones if you are at home with small children or in public. Tracy said, I lost my Anatolian. I hope I pronounced that right. Shepherd dog Falker earlier this week. I'm sorry. And no, most dog owners don't have that attitude towards family pets. They are family members. That's always been my experience. So I'm sorry for the loss of your Ponnard. It is a uniquely difficult thing. So let's see. Missy to Mrs. said, can't even take ours to condo for vacation. Too stressful for her with the noise. I mean, dogs definitely hear everything. Vermont sounds like the state's version of a farm somewhere in the country. I don't believe the dog is alive. I don't know if the jury can speculate on it. She said the dog was rehomed. I don't know. I don't know what we have with that. Shauna said, poll on who is doing the cross for Brian Albert. I'm sorry, we're a bit late on that. Massachusetts pronunciation, Peabody is Peabody. I mean, yes. And I only know that from you, Mass. Can't believe it's been 22 months already. Thank you, Kim. I feel like it's been 22 months since this trial started. Lally said 11 million people have said where they are. I am 11 million T. I mean, I don't think it's in controversy who was at the waterfall. I don't think anyone's fighting over who was at the waterfall. I don't think anyone is saying people weren't at the waterfall. It's just the things in controversy need more time, not the things that aren't in controversy. This witness looked dressed for the Titanic because he knows that the band is playing us all to our slow and sinking demise. Becca said, I literally just left the morning hearing. I'm late today, just came to this live, not Trooper Bukaki. It's never going to end. It's never going to end. Let's see. Thank you, Malleus Maximus, for explaining to the chat the relevance of the dog. Stephen, thank you for keeping me honest. It's pronounced ka. But we did get a, park the ka at the drive. Like we did get a whole situation about packing the ka. We did see that, which is fantastic. Danielle, thank you so much for the incredibly kind super chat. Danielle said, please say a prayer for my father. And as I just learned this morning, he has passed away from stage 4 cancer and pneumonia. I'm so sorry. I ask if you all can raise a drink to him being the most loving, most generous father in the world. Thanks, EDB and chat. RIP, Dad. Danielle, I'm sorry for your loss. a pint. Sadly, it's not anything stronger than water at the moment, but we will absolutely raise a glass and, in the way of my people, also pour one out. So I'm sorry for your loss. It is definitely a difficult thing. A number of super chats regarding loss in the chat. Barb West, thank you so much. Brian Allman said it's nice that we have so much testimony about the night out a group of friends had at a bar, but at what point are we going to get to the, crime? I don't know. And for those of you that complimented my Boston look, I never do it in a way to be mocking. I did go to UMass Amherst. I do have a lot of love for Massachusetts. And I did get very tired of people asking me where I was from. So sometimes you just have to adapt a little bit. So also when UMass is kind of UMass is a fairly local school. So it had quite a lot of Massachusetts locals. Our water polo team was just a bit more diverse because water polo was not, especially women's water polo in the 90s, was not hugely popular in the state of Massachusetts. Not every high school has a water polo team. So our water polo team had a bit more diversity from elsewhere. But yes, they absolutely clocked that I was from California. The water polo team also probably gave it away a little bit. Miss Shorty said, EDB, I'm a newish law nerd who lives in Melbourne, Australia. You're in good company. Lots of Australian law nerds here. I'm generally replay crew watching each day, trial a session behind. Thank you for the law stuff and the laughs. You rock. You're welcome. Also, if you ever need to catch up quickly, Quick Bits is there on the Quick Bits channel. Emily D. Baker Quick Bits. Let's see. Mama Wolf said, my dogs do not bark inside the house, only outside. I mean, they didn't talk about how the dog was trained. Not to mention Karen screaming. My Great Shepherd would have taken that as a singing competition. Again, I don't know how much they heard in the house. Snow does dampen things, but I don't know how much. I've never really heard somebody outside my house with a snowblower. They didn't hear Karen wailing. Apparently not. I mean, we heard Karen over the wind in a car with the doors closed on kind of a not great dash cam. And we heard her very clear. Also, we heard the 911 calls from Carrie Roberts and Jen McCabe, and neither of them sounded particularly flustered, upset, distraught, distressed. So my pit legit hid when someone tried to break in. Jen, were you just like, sir, you have one job, just a little barking. A little barking. And I guess goes dog by dog. Barbara Fett, Emily, can you say hello to Oscar, my cockatiel? Hi, Oscar. He's a huge fan. He cussed me out for turning off the stream yesterday. Oscar, we love a bird with the cursey words. We do. Tanner said, do you think Karen Reed should testify? Not yet. If I think there's something that only Karen can explain, I will let you know. But at this point, no, I don't know how her testimony would help. I don't know what she would need to explain at this point. I think we're just not there yet. We need to see what else the state brings in, but it's just slow. Rebecca said at the end of week 2, and Lolly isn't gagging me with the case so far. Thanks, EDB, in the chat for the giggles while I work. You're welcome. We're happy to be here. It's a lot. I'm not buying that all these uninvolved people are gathering together in person at 7 a.m. in a blizzard for good reasons. All the behavior is wrong. I do appreciate that the last 2 witnesses were like, oh yeah, we were chatting with each other about what was going on. I'm anticipating the defense is going to say to Brian Albert, you've been a law enforcement officer for 30 years. And y'all were just talking about everything that happened that night. You didn't say, hey, maybe we should just not. Nope, not at all. Do you know if Chloe was a former police dog? Not in evidence, only that she was adopted from Dallas, Texas, but not in evidence. So will Karen testify? I would love to hear her point of view. I don't know if the risk reward payoff is there. So I would say not yet, but we will see. Linda said, so if the drink in the glass was Karen's, are we sure John took the glass to the house instead of leaving it in the car with Karen? Also, Jen let Lank in. Don't know. And it seems like maybe Jen let Lank in, but the door was unlocked. So maybe Lank just came in, which would be odd. Didn't sound like the police would be okay just entering. Or I don't remember that testimony of who let the dogs out. No, who let the officer in? I remember making a joke about, they're kind of like vampires. You have to invite them in. But I don't know if it was Jen that invited them in, if the wife went down and invited them in or not. There's just so many questions. So Casey Cat said he had not been pronounced dead at this time, but Jen says John is dead. Karen was also texting around the same time to the wife of the childhood friend who is the nurse and said John is dead. So they had assumed that at that time. So no, not pronounced, but they had assumed that at that time when he was being taken off in the stretcher. So I'm going to see if we have a few more questions. Let's see. Brandy Rose said, I would be very interested to see if a particular group of cell phones suddenly show a lot of movement around the same time with no activity, with no active uses of the phone. I don't know. We have not even gotten to the cell phone testimony. So we have just not. Emma, my boyfriend from New Hampshire says people in New England mind their business and it's not abnormal that they don't go outside for police lights. My Midwest self is skeptical. I think Brian Albert said it pretty clearly when he said, I didn't want to be involved. They're doing the thing. I don't want to be involved. I don't want to be involved. I don't want to be involved. And I think that's probably true. He probably didn't want to be involved. Okay. It's odd, but it's tough. So BLT says, Emily, I worry about your blood pressure when Lolly gets under your skin. My blood pressure is fine. Thank you. It is like a grating annoyance at this point that I really want to understand the prosecution's case. Very much want to understand the prosecution's case. I very much want to understand why we are here. I am frustrated that we don't. I don't like not knowing things. I am chomping and impatient to understand why we're here and what else the state is going to show and how we get to a DUI and how we get to him getting hit. I am trying to be patient, but it makes it hard to focus when I'm like, but how are we getting there? And that's because the opening statement was just not clear. And in the opening, we're just not getting to, these are the things you're going to see. It was so much detail. It was hard to see the forest for the trees, truly. And that's very hard. And then it makes it even harder to not go look for outside information to supplement the gaps. So it's hard to sit on my hands and just wait for it to be presented. The Reed case was over by this point, right? A lot of the other cases move faster. The Murdaugh case, whether you liked the attorneys or didn't like the attorneys made it very clear in opening what they were going to show. Very clear. Depp Heard, the attorneys made it very clear in opening what they were going to show. Did everybody deliver on what they say? No, I don't think Elaine ever proved that the compact that she held up and was like, this exact thing was the thing. But they were very clear on what they were going to show. I don't think we've watched a trial together on this channel where the opening statements weren't as clear. Oh, not this Reed case. Sorry, the Hannah Gutierrez Reed case. The other one. I don't think I've ever been more befuddled by a case. I don't think I've ever been more confused by the openings. So I don't know. So with all of that, I'm going to see if there is any other quick questions we can get to, and then it's Friday, and we're going to just be like, we have done our diligence for today. We have sat here as the jury. It's been a wild morning and then a slower afternoon, but we'll get to cross next, and that's what it is. Aaron said, mind their business. We don't know how to do that in the South. I mean, Southern California is the same way. We were always like what's going on down there? Anyway, with all of that, chat, the jury is out. I am out. I I am tired. I'm sure you are too. I can't imagine how exhausted this jury is. I will put up the schedule as the judge gave it to us in the app. I am going to take a weekend to try to recoup. I have to record the podcast. Members, I will be notifying you in the app to check your member spaces for podcast recording. We might have 2 different sessions of podcast recording this weekend, so keep in mind. When I say check your member spaces, I mean on YouTube, your member tab. Elsewhere in your member space, there will be a link to the podcast recordings. Those are for our members only. So if you're a member on YouTube, you will have access to that and see it in your member tab, and I will notify you on the app. I'm going to try to not record the podcast on Sunday, which means it's going to be a tomorrow thing. We still need to get Quick Bits done, so there is a lot of work left to do in this day. So all of you have a good weekend. Thank you for the Mother's Day wishes. Happy Mother's Day to all of you mothers. And for all of you who have mothers, happy Mother's Day. For all of you who've lost your mothers, raise a glass if that is what you want to do. I will talk to you guys later. I am exhausted. And I bet you are too. Law Nerds, we'll see you soon. Bye.
You can stay up to date with everything I'm covering and fast notifications on our free iOS and Android app at lawnerdapp.com or search the App Store for Law Nerd. You can also follow me around social media, and don't forget to check out my podcast, The Emily Show, with quick bits dropping every Monday, summarizing everything I do here on the live streams on Tuesday and Thursday for when you just have time for the quick bits. Thanks for being a Law Nerd.